Chapter 1686. It was only today that Jiang Ningxue realized how devoted Ji Tianxing was to his love. At this moment, she was extremely envious of Yun Yao. She was able to receive all of Ji Tianxing's love, and he was so loyal to her. This was the kind of love that Jiang Ningxue had always dreamed of. A couple for life. Together, they will live and prosper together. Perhaps only a goddess like Yun Yao is worthy of Ji Tianxing's heart. Jiang Ningxue sighed with bitterness in her heart. The great guardian, Song Zhanyu, and the others all looked at Ji Tianxing with complicated expressions. They did not know what to say. Qin Songqiong, on the other hand, was very carefree. He cupped his fist towards Ji Tianxing and smiled. "Senior brother Ji, I admire your devotion. However, if you leave like this and give me the position of the first God's disciple, will you be unhappy?" This was the first time he called Ji Tianxing senior brother. This showed that he admired Ji Tianxing from the bottom of his heart. Ji Tianxing smiled and shook his head. "I'm just a passerby. You are the best candidate for the position of the first God's disciple." Wu Kei looked at him with reluctance. He cupped his fists and said, "Young Master Ji, Wu Kei will never forget the help you gave me back then. Since you have made up your mind, Wu Kei will not try to persuade you anymore. I only hope that you will be able to live a peaceful life with Miss Yun Yao after you go to the Luoshan God Kingdom." Ji Tianxing smiled and nodded. He reminded him, "I will only be leaving for a short period of time. Perhaps after many years, I will return to Mount God Bestowment. You have to cultivate diligently. If I see you again in the future and you are too weak, don't tell me that you know me." Wu Kei smiled and shook his head. "Don't worry, young Master Ji. With your words, I will cultivate diligently even if I have to risk my life. I look forward to the day we meet again. When that day comes, I will tell you a secret." "What secret?" Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and looked at him with interest. A playful smile appeared on Wu Kei's face. He pretended to be mysterious. "Of course, I cannot tell you now. I will tell you when we meet again." "All right." Ji Tianxing smiled helplessly. He nodded and said, "Let's talk about it in the future then." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands at the Great Guardian and said, "Great Guardian, I'll take my leave now." The Great Guardian nodded and said, Ji Tianji, green, to be Tianji. Tianji was Tianji. Ji Tianxing stopped and turned around to look at her. He asked calmly, "Miss Jiang, what's the matter?" Jiang Ningxue looked at him with a complicated look in her eyes. She said with a bitter tone, "You're leaving, but you won't even say goodbye to me?" "Oh." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "Miss Jiang, then I'll take my leave." Jiang Ningxue was a bit embarrassed, but she still summoned her courage and said, "Wait, young Master Ji, don't you have anything else to say to me?" Ji Tianxing stared at her for a moment before he sternly said, "You are a beautiful woman, but you are associated with lowly people. If this goes on for a long time, you will certainly hurt yourself. It will be too late to regret." Jiang Ningxue hurriedly explained, "Young Master Ji, I know you're still hung up over what happened back then, but I've already made up my mind to never associate with that person again." That's good." Ji Tianxing nodded and said sincerely, "You're such a beautiful woman. Why do you care about me? If you meet a man you like in the future, just marry him." A bitter smile flashed across Jiang Ningxue's eyes. She murmured in a low voice, "If I didn't meet you, it might be possible. But now that I've met you, why would I like another man?" Ji Tianxing frowned and said apologetically, "I'm sorry, I can't help you with this. Miss Jiang, please use your time to clear your memories. After a long time, when your memories fade away, you'll let it go. My wife is still waiting for me. Goodbye." Then, he turned around and left without looking back. Jiang Ningxue looked at his back sadly. She smiled bitterly and sighed in her heart. "Once I meet Tianxing, I'll miss him forever. Once I don't meet him, I'll miss him forever." Qin Songqiong, Song Zhanyu, and Joaquin were secretly sizing her up and shaking their heads. Only now did they realize that Jiang Ningxue had already fallen deeply in love with Ji Tianxing. But who could say for sure when it came to love? The great guardian did not feel anything. He calmly took out his flying boat. "All right, it's time for us to go." Then, he led Song Zhanyu, Jiang Ningxue, and the others into the flying boat and flew up into the sky. After the great guardian and the others left, only Ji Tianxing and the 6 people from the Luo Shui God Nation were left on the ancient viewing platform. When Ji Tianxing returned to Yin Yao had just finished talking with Grandma Long. She smiled and walked up to Ji Tianxing, holding his arm naturally. Then, she walked up to Grandma Long and introduced them. "Tianxing, this is Grandma Long, the great guardian of the Luo Shui God Mountain." "Grandma Long, this is Ji." Before Yin Yao could finish, Grandma Long interrupted her. She smiled happily and said, "There's no need for introductions. I already know that Ji Tianxing is your husband." Grandma Long had a kind look on her face. Her smile was especially happy and gratified. She looked at Ji Tianxing with sparkling eyes, as if she had seen a rare treasure. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands and said calmly, "Junior." Ji Tianxing greets Grandma Long. "What do you think?" "Of course I agree." Grandma Long smiled and nodded. She said confidently, "Kid, I'm more than happy that you're willing to come to our Luo Shui God Nation." "Sigh, I didn't expect such a surprise to come so suddenly. Just now I was envious of the Great Guardian. I didn't expect the vast God Nation to have such a monstrous genius like you. I didn't expect that in the blink of an eye, you would become the son-in-law of our Luo Shui God Nation. This is too surprising. Although I haven't reported this matter to the Divine Lord, I can still make the decision to agree. Tianxing, don't worry. I will take care of you like how I take care of Yin Yao in the future." Grandma Long was very emotional. She said so much in one breath, as if she was afraid that Ji Tianxing would go back on his word. Yiqing Luo, Lu Xiaoming, and the others were dumbfounded as they listened. They looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief. After a while, when they came back to their senses, they exclaimed in disbelief, "Oh my God, Ji Tianxing, you want to join our Luo Shui God Nation? I can't believe it. You gave up the glory and identity of the number 1 God's disciple for love? So this is the power of love. I believe in love again." The 2 young men were still calm. Yiqing Luo and Lu Xiaoming were extremely emotional. It took them a while to calm down. Grandma Long and Ji Tianxing chatted for a while and then introduced a few God's disciples to him so that they could get to know each other. "This is Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao's husband. I don't think I need to introduce him, right? From today onwards, Yin Yao is your big senior sister and Ji Tianxing is your big senior brother. Tianxing, this is Yiqing Luo and this is Lu Xiaoming. This is Zhou Bin and this is Wenrinyu." Chapter 1687. An ice-blue flying boat sped across the sky towards the east. The airship was 100 feet long, and it was very spacious. There was a spacious hall with a dozen rooms and secret rooms. At that moment, Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao, and the rest were gathered in the luxurious hall. The floor of the hall was paved with spiritual jade, and the surrounding walls were inlaid with gemstone lamps that shone brightly. Granny Long sat in the main seat, while Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao, and Yiqing Luo sat on the left side of the hall. Lu Xiaoming, Zhou Bin, and Wenrinyu sat on the right side. Ji Tianxing had a preliminary understanding of the few God's disciples through the previous introduction and the short contact they had. Among the 5 God disciples, Yin Yao was the strongest. She had reached the 7th level of the primordial soul realm and was everyone's eldest senior sister. Apart from her, the other 4 God disciples had reached the 6th level of the primordial soul realm. Yiqing Luo, who was ranked 2nd, was tall and wore a green dress. Her face was fair and delicate, and she had a virtuous and elegant temperament. Zhou Bin, who was ranked 3rd, was a tall and elegant young master. He was a man of few words and seemed to be shrewd and insightful. Wenrinyu, who was ranked 4th, wore a white robe. He was thin and handsome. He had a kind face and was more extroverted. However, He had a noble aura that was unique to ancient clans. As for Lu Xiaoming, who was ranked 5th, she was a petite girl with a cute face. 2 small dimples appeared on her fair cheeks when she smiled. Ji Tianxing did not know much about the group since it was his first time meeting them. He only observed their expressions and actions silently and did not take the initiative to strike up a conversation. At that moment, Granny Long said kindly, "Everyone, you must help each other on Luotian Mountain in the future and improve together under the glory of the Divine Master. Although Ji Tianxing is a new god disciple, you must respect him as your eldest senior brother. You must not secretly exclude or criticize him. You are the god disciples selected from many geniuses. Not only are you the most talented, but you are also the most upright. If anyone dares to disobey my orders, don't blame me for using the law." Granny Long's tone was not harsh, but it had an unquestionable majesty. The god apostles nodded their heads to show that they understood. Lu Xiaoming, who was the youngest, stuck out her tongue and said, "Granny Long, you worry too much. Senior Brother Ji is the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms. How we dare to bully him? Even if we have the guts, we don't have the ability." Wenren nodded and said with a smile, "Junior Martial Sister Xiao Meng is right. Senior Martial Brother Ji is a heavenly genius. We don't have the ability to suppress him." Heaven Absolute Divine Nation's Huang Qi was the best example. That Huang Qi is so outstanding, but when he met Senior Apprentice Brother Ji, didn't he still end up dejected and in a sorry state? Hearing his words, everyone chuckled. Zhou Bin nodded in agreement and said with a solemn expression, "Not only is Senior Martial Brother Ji's strength outstanding, but he is also eldest Senior Martial Sister's husband. Together, they're the role model and leader of all God disciples. Who dares to bully them?" Seeing that no one was against Ji Tianxing, Granny Long was relieved. She nodded with a smile and said, "That's good. I am relieved that all of you can get along well." Then, she looked at Ji Tianxing kindly and asked, "Tianxing, you are new here, and you have the reputation of being the #1 genius of the 3 kingdoms. Everyone is curious about you. Do you have anything you want to say to everyone?" Yun Yao and the God Apostles turned their heads to look at Ji Tianxing with kind eyes. Ji Tianxing thought for a while and said calmly, "Junior Martial brothers and sisters, if you have any problems in the future, you can come to me. If I can help you, I will do my best." These 2 sentences of his immediately won everyone's favorable impression. Yiqing Luo, Wenren Yu, and the others nodded with a smile and said, "Thank you, Senior Martial Brother Ji. If we have any problems, we will definitely come to you." Lu Xiaoming's big eyes looked around, and she suddenly thought of something. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a smile and said jokingly, "Senior Martial Brother Ji, there is no need to wait for the future. I have a question now, and I want to ask you." Everyone turned their heads to look at her and teased her with a smile. "Xiaoming is the one with the most ideas. Junior Martial Sister Xiaoming, you are really not polite with Senior Martial Brother Ji." Ji Tianxing nodded at Lu Xiaoming and said, "Junior Martial Sister Xiaoming, ask away." Lu Xiaoming immediately revealed a sly smile, and 2 small dimples appeared on her pretty face. "Senior Martial Brother Ji, can you tell us what it is like in the ruins of God? Did you find anything in the ruins of God?" Hearing this question, the God Apostles looked expectant. Even Granny Long looked at Ji Tianxing and said with a smile, "Xiaoming, you have hit the nail on the head. To be honest, I would like to know too. However, this is related to Tianxing's privacy. If he doesn't want to tell us, don't force him." Ji Tianxing didn't want to tell the truth, but seeing everyone's expectant eyes, he smiled and said, "The ruins of God is actually an alternate dimension and a cemetery. There were countless tombs in the mausoleum, where the gods of various races were buried since ancient times. As for what I found in the ruins of God, it is not worth mentioning. It can't help me increase my strength at all." Hearing this, everyone had a better understanding of the ruins of God. As for what he found, he didn't want to talk about it, and the others didn't ask anymore. Next, Lu Xiaoming and Yiqing Luo asked a few more questions. These questions had nothing to do with martial arts cultivation. They were all gossip about life and relationships. For example, Yiqing Luo asked Ji Tianxing how he met Yin Yao and how he captured Yin Yao's heart. Lu Xiaoming's questions were even more tricky. She asked if Ji Tianxing was afraid of his wife. Would he want a son or a daughter in the future? These quirky questions amused everyone to the point of snickering endlessly, and the atmosphere became extremely lively and cheerful. Yin Yao didn't feel embarrassed or angry. She just looked at Ji Tianxing quietly and waited for his answer. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing used his outstanding wisdom and reaction to deal with these questions. Everyone chatted in the hall for half a day and closed the distance between them. It was late at night that everyone returned to their rooms to rest. Ji Tianxing followed Yin Yao back to her room. The two hugged each other intimately for a while before they began to talk about business. Only now did Ji Tianxing tell Yin Yao about his experience and knowledge in the ruins of God with a serious expression. In the cemetery of the gods, there are hundreds of tombs lined up from the foot of the mountain to the peak. I found the tomb of the white dragon god and saved a wisp of his remnant soul. Unfortunately, I didn't find Qin Shin's tomb. Old Man of the Ruins of God said that Qin Shin didn't really die. However, I saw the tomb of the Jade Light God King on the mountain peak. Chapter 1688. After listening to Ji Tianxing's story, Yin Yao was rather shocked. She pondered for a moment before saying, 1,000 years ago, Qin Shin and Divine Lord White Dragon perished one after another. Divine Lord White Dragon's tomb is in the ruins of gods, but Qin Shin's tomb isn't there. If things are as Old Man Godly Ruins said, the ruins of gods are the greatest secret in the world. As long as a god of this world perishes, a tomb will appear in the ruins of gods. This means that Qin Shin didn't really perish. Perhaps he will be like other gods, leaving behind a wisp of his remnant soul. He will awaken and be reborn or reincarnated. At this point, Yin Yao stared at Ji Tianxing and said in a serious tone, Tianxing, have you ever thought that you are actually... Ji Tianxing nodded and revealed a playful smile. I've actually suspected this question a long time ago, but unfortunately, I've never been able to verify it. In the past year or so, memories of Qin Shin would often appear in the depths of my soul. I believe this is not a coincidence. There must be a reason. Yin Yao nodded slightly and comforted him. Don't worry. The truth will surface sooner or later. Perhaps when you are strong enough, you will be able to solve the mystery. Ji Tianxing acknowledged and stopped discussing the topic. I saw Divine Monarch Nacre Light's tomb at the peak of the Cemetery of the Gods. I tried to communicate with the tomb, and after a long time, I sensed that there was a divine power aura hidden in the tomb. Unfortunately, before I could figure out what the divine power was, I expended too much energy and fainted. When I woke up, the one-day deadline was up. Old Man Godly Ruins sent me out of the ruins of gods. Sigh, what a pity. If I could obtain that divine power aura, it would definitely be of great benefit to you. Yin Yao held his hands and said calmly, You have already done your best. Don't blame yourself or feel regret. Old Man Godly Ruins also said that everything depends on fate. Perhaps it's because your opportunity hasn't arrived yet. That's why you can't obtain that ball of divine power. However, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely enter the ruins of gods personally to take a look at God King Nacrelight's tomb. Ji Tianxing smiled. Now that you are the reincarnation of a Nacrelight goddess, if you can reach her tomb, you'll definitely be able to obtain that ball of divine power. Yes. Yin Yao nodded slightly and said calmly, We can't rush this matter. I've only just awakened some memories of Goddess Yao Wang, and my strength is increasing rapidly. In a few more years, when I become stronger and awaken more memories, I might have more confidence in going to the ruins of God. Let's not talk about this for now. Let me tell you about the Luo River God Nation. Ji Tianxing nodded. All right, Yin Yao calmly explained. The Luo Shui Divine Kingdom is located to the east of Shenwu Continent, and the easternmost part of the continent is the Endless Sky Sea. It was said that on the other side of the Heavenly Sea was another continent. However, the Heavenly Sea was sealed by a deity, so it could not be crossed. The Luo Shui Divine Kingdom's national strength is comparable to the Boundless Divine Kingdom, and it might even be slightly stronger. There are a total of 7 empires, and each empire has billions of cultivators and commoners. It has been peaceful for thousands of years. In the middle of the 7 empires, there is a sacred land of martial arts known as Luo Shui Mountain. This is a training ground established by the Luo Shui Divine Lord. Currently, there are only 10 God disciples left on Luo Shui Mountain. Including you, there are 11 of them. Granny Long is highly regarded by the Luo Shui Divine Lord, and she leads Luo Shui Mountain. She also has 3 protectors and 7 divine envoys under her. Ji Tianxing listened quietly and quickly understood the situation at Luo Shui Mountain. From his point of view, Luo Shui Mountain's situation was very similar to God Sealing Mountains, and the relationships between the people were much simpler. This was beneficial for the God disciples to focus on their cultivation without having to waste time and effort to scheme against each other. An hour later, Yin Yao finished explaining the situation at Luo Shui Mountain in detail. The two chatted about other things, and Yin Yao asked Ji Tianxing about his experiences and encounters over the past year. Ji Tianxing talked about the situation in Tianxian continent, as well as the destruction of the Fiend race and the escape of the Fiend Emperor. Naturally, he mentioned the Ghost race in Dark North Mountain, the 36 demon monarchs, the Blood God, and so on. After a night, Ji Tianxing told Yin Yao about his experiences over the past year in detail. Only then did Yin Yao know how much pain and danger he had experienced, and how much pressure he had endured. This also made her cherish the present reunion even more. For the next 20 days, the flying ships sped through the sky. They passed through more than half of the Heaven Extinction Divination, crossing hundreds of millions of miles of territory. During this period, Ji Tianxing and the other God's disciples were meditating and cultivating in their own rooms. 25 days later, the flying ship finally returned to Luo Shui Mountain. At this time, Ji Tianxing had already refined the azure with divine power given to him by Old Man Godly Ruins after more than 20 days of cultivation. His body and essence soul had reached their peak state. His strength had also more than doubled, reaching the peak of the 8th level essence soul realm. Early in the morning, the sun had just risen. The ice-blue flying ship came to the peak of a 10,000-meter-tall mountain and stopped. Granny Long transmitted her voice to the 6 God disciples. "Everyone, we have returned to Luo Shui Mountain." When everyone heard her voice, they ended their cultivation and rushed to the spacious hall to gather. When Granny Long saw that everyone had arrived, she cast a spell and put away the ice-blue flying ship. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the flying ship disappeared. Everyone's figures appeared in the sky, standing directly above the 10,000-meter-tall mountain. They saw that the sky above their heads was a clear blue, without any impurities. The sky around them was filled with white clouds and mist that flowed slowly like a stream. Below their feet was a 10,000-meter-tall, ice-blue mountain. Even though the mountain was shrouded in clouds and the appearance of the mountain could not be seen clearly, it still exuded a sacred and majestic aura. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with a radius of 50 miles. On this flat land, there were more than 30 magnificent, simple, and elegant palaces, as well as more than a dozen residences. The extremely dense, spiritual chi of heaven and earth formed 5-colored auspicious clouds that covered the palaces. Squads of guards in ice-blue armor were patrolling the palaces and mansions. This was the martial arts sacred ground of the Luo Shui Divine Nation, Luo Shui Mountain. Ji Tianxing looked down at Luo Shui Mountain and felt that it was filled with a peaceful and warm aura. He believed that the atmosphere here was better than Mount God and was more suitable for cultivation. "Let's go," Granny Long called out and led everyone through the defensive array and landed on Luo Shui Mountain. Yiqing Luo, Lu Xiaoming, Zhou Bin, and the others said goodbye to everyone and returned to their own residences. In the end, only Granny Long, Ji Tianxing, and Yin Yao were left. Granny Long looked at Yin Yao and said with a smile, "Yin Yao, Ji Tianxing has come to Luo Shui Mountain. With his status and talent, I should arrange a palace for him. However, he is your husband, and I would like to hear your opinion about his residence." Yin Yao did not hesitate or feel embarrassed. She said naturally, Tianqing is my husband. How can I let him live elsewhere? It is not good for others to serve him. Chapter 1689. As for Ji Tianqing's residence, it was decided just like that. After Granny Long bade farewell, she rushed back to her residence to report to God Lord Luo Shui about Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao passed through several wide paths and walked towards the Cloud Water Palace in the depths of the palace complex. The two strolled leisurely, admiring the scenery of Luotian Mountain as they walked. Yun Yao introduced the various palaces to Ji Tianqing, helping him familiarize himself with the situation of Luotian Mountain. After all, he was going to stay here for a long time, so he had to familiarize himself with the environment. An hour later, the two returned to Cloud Water Palace. This palace was located deep in the mountain peak, and there were many palaces and courtyards around it. Cloud Water Palace was 1,000 feet wide, with 3 floors and dozens of rooms. There were also 2 gardens, one at the front and one at the back. The resplendent palace was filled with golden beams and painted rafters. It was very luxurious and dignified. Ji Tianqing asked Yun Yao and learned that Luotian Mountain had arranged dozens of guards and maids for Cloud Water Palace. Those guards were all elite soldiers, and the maids were all young and smart, obedient and sensible people. Fortunately, Yun Yao did her best to stop Granny Long, leaving only the maids and guards. Otherwise, Granny Long would have arranged more than 100 guards and maids for her. In addition, Ji Tianqing discovered that Cloud Water Palace was protected by powerful divine arrays. There were also 4 sage-level arrays used to absorb heaven and earth spirit qi to aid cultivation. The heaven and earth spirit qi in Cloud Water Palace was 8 times denser than in other palaces. It was very beneficial to martial artist cultivation. Ji Tianqing asked Yun Yao and learned that Cloud Water Palace used to be martial god Luo Shui's residence. However, martial god Luo Shui resided in Outer Heaven Divine Palace and would not come to Luotian Mountain. Martial god Luo Shui was not married, and she did not have a divine son or divine daughter. Usually, she would send a message to Granny Long or send a divine official if there were any decrees or matters. Only when a divine official came to Luotian Mountain would she temporarily stay in Cloud Water Palace. All the signs indicated that Yun Yao enjoyed the best treatment and the best cultivation resources in the Luotian Mountain. Ji Tianqing was not surprised at all, and he understood the real reason. After all, Yao Yao has inherited Goddess Yao Wang's legacy and is the person the Luo Shui martial god values the most. No matter how generous Yao Yao's treatment is, it's not excessive. Yun Yao led Ji Tianqing around the Cloud Water Palace before returning to their residence on the 2nd floor. The two of them had just reached the entrance of the living room when they saw a draconian man in golden armor. This person was tall and mighty. He had the body of a human, but he had a dragon head and a dragon tail. His skin was covered with dragon scales. Ji Tianqing immediately recognized that this golden armored dragon man was the guard protecting Yun Yao. His name was Jin Long. Jin Long bowed respectfully when he saw the two of them return. Jin Long greets Master and young Master Ji. Yun Yao was afraid that Ji Tianqing would not recognize him, so she introduced him. Tianqing, this is Jin Long. He protects me with Black Eagle and is absolutely loyal to me. Ji Tianqing nodded at Jin Long and revealed a kind smile. Jin Long had always been taciturn and was not good with words. He did not know how to respond to Ji Tianqing and could only squeeze out a smile. However, he had a dragon head and his smile was rather strange, even a little sinister. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else and followed Yun Yao into the living room. A 2-meter-tall, enchanting woman in a black leather coat stood in the bright and luxurious living room. She had a hot figure and her long black hair was tied into a braid. There was a pair of black wings on her back. Her eyebrows and lips were dark purple in color. Her 10 fingers also had sharp and narrow fingernails that were like blades. When she saw that Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had returned, she hurriedly came forward and bowed with a smile. Black Eagle greets Master. You're finally back. Master, this young Master beside, you should be young Master Ji, right? Yin Yao nodded and introduced the two of them calmly. Ji Tianxing nodded at Black Eagle and greeted him. Black Eagle stared at him excitedly. After sizing him up for a while, he bowed and said, Black Eagle greets young Master Ji. Master has been thinking about you day and night and has not been able to eat or sleep well. I didn't expect that Master would be reunited with young Master Ji after a trip to the ruins of God. Congratulations. Yin Yao revealed a smile and gave a simple explanation. Then, she led Ji Tianxing through the living room and into the bedroom. The spacious bedroom was decorated with simple decorations and furnishings, but it exuded an elegant aura. There was a faint fragrance in the air that made Ji Tianxing yearn for it. It was Yin Yao's unique body fragrance. Tianxing, you'll live here from now on. There are 2 secret rooms in the 2 corners of the room. It's perfect for us to cultivate in seclusion. Yin Yao stood in the room and pointed at the bookshelves in the 2 corners as she spoke to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing reached out and wrapped his arms around her slender waist. He pulled her into his embrace and whispered into her ear in a voice that only the 2 of them could hear. Yao Yao, do you really want to live in the same room as me? Aren't you afraid that I'll eat you? Yin Yao's cheeks flushed red. She leaned on his shoulder and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz, I'm your wife. Whether you eat me or not, you can eat me whenever you want. Moreover, we should have consummated our marriage 2 years ago when we got married. It's just that there were so many twists and turns that we delayed it until now. Hubby, it's been hard on you. Hearing her shy and timid words, Ji Tianxing's heart was tickled. He revealed a mischievous smile and said, I've been on the road for more than 20 days. I'm physically and mentally exhausted now. Yao Yao, I'm a little tired. Why don't we go to bed and rest now? Yin Yao's pretty face turned even redder. Her cheeks burned, and her clear eyes were so gentle that they almost dripped with water. She leaned on Ji Tianxing's shoulder and asked in a weak voice, Tianxing, it's still daytime. We just came back. Wouldn't it be inappropriate to do it now? Ji Tianxing immediately smiled mischievously and said, Ahem, hubby, I'm just saying. Consummating our marriage is such an important and sacred thing. Of course, we have to wait until night to avoid being disturbed. I still have some things to deal with, so I'll go out first. Yin Yao finally understood that he was deliberately teasing her. She couldn't help but glare at him reproachfully. You go ahead. I just came back. I also have some things to deal with. Then, the 2 of them left the room one after the other. Yin Yao took Black Shadow and left the Cloud Water Palace to deal with some private matters. Ji Tianxing entered the secret room, opened the Sword World, and summoned Ji Bai and Shohei. Before this, Ji Bai and Shohei had been healing and cultivating in the Sword World. After such a long time of recuperation, Ji Bai's injuries had long since healed, and his essence, energy, and spirit had recovered to their peak. The 2 of them appeared in the dark secret room and cupped their hands to Ji Tianxing. Master, why did you summon us? Chapter 1690. Ji Bai and Shohei clearly did not understand the situation. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to briefly explain what had happened before. After the 2 of them heard this, they were stunned. Master, you actually gave up on the vast divine nation and joined the Luo Shui divine nation? Master, you actually have a wife? Your wife is the #1 god disciple of the Luo Shui divine nation? Ji Bai's reaction could still be considered calm. He was originally rather cold. Shohei became even more excited. He looked at Ji Tianxing in disbelief and exclaimed with a complicated tone, I really can't believe that you and Madam are both peerless geniuses. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and explained, When I joined Mount God Bestowment, it was not to become a god's disciple, but to find the whereabouts of my wife. Now that I've reunited with her, of course I'll stay by her side and never leave her. Moreover, the Luo Shui martial god had a close relationship with the Kenshin and had even received favors from the Kenshin. If the Luo Shui martial god knows that I'm here, he'll definitely take care of me. Ji Bai calmly nodded his head and said, That's right. Furthermore, the Luo Shui divine country is closer to the pillar of heaven's mountains. For us, it's more convenient. When Ji Bai mentioned the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, Ji Tianxing recalled the map of the Shenwu continent. The three divine kingdoms were located in the west, center, and east of the continent. The northernmost part of the Heaven and God Nation was the North Underworld Mountain, where the ghost race was entrenched. It was extremely dangerous. In the north of the Luo Shui God Nation, there was an unclaimed region of 1 billion miles, and it was ruled by the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. That's right, Ji Bai, Shohei. Since you follow me to the Luo River God Nation, you should report back to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. For the next period of time, I might stay in the Luotian mountain and be safe. If you have something to do and need to leave, just do it. You don't have to protect me anymore. Ji Bai and Shohei looked at each other, then cupped their hands and bowed to Ji Tianxing. Thank you, Master, for your help. We do have something to do and need to return to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, It's fine. Go ahead. Shohei added and explained, Master, don't worry. We will deal with the matter as soon as possible and rush back to protect you. According to my estimation, you will be back in 3 months at most. Yes, no problem. Ji Tianxing nodded his head again as he warned, There's no time to lose. I'll send you all out of the Luotian mountain now. It's a long journey back to Tianju Mountain from here, so you have to pay attention to your safety. After that, Ji Tianxing personally sent Ji Bai and Shohei off. After the two of them left Luotian Mountain, Ji Tianxing returned to Cloud Water Palace. He had nothing to do, so he meditated in his bedroom and waited for Yin Yao to come back. Soon, half a day had passed. By the time Yin Yao finished her work and returned to her room, it was already nighttime. Husband, sorry to keep you waiting. Yin Yao looked at Ji Tianxing with an apologetic expression. Ji Tianxing sat on the spacious spiritual jade bed and looked at her with a smile. He patted the quilt next to him and said, Yao Yao, you must be tired after a busy day, right? Come and rest. Yin Yao revealed a shy expression. She lowered her head and said in a low voice, Husband, don't be impatient. I'll go to the hot spring to bathe and clean my body first, then I'll come and serve you. Ji Tianxing had long known that she had the habit of soaking in hot springs, so he said with a mischievous smile, Oh? Yao Yao, is there a hot spring in your bedroom too? Why don't I accompany you and wash your body and mind before resting? It'll be more solemn and holy. As he spoke, he got up and got out of bed without waiting for Yin Yao's reply. He walked in front of Yin Yao, stretched out his arms, and carried Yin Yao in his arms. He then walked toward the back of the bedroom. Yin Yao struggled a few times, but she couldn't break free from his embrace, so she could only let him hold her. There was a secret door at the back of the bedroom. After it was opened, it was connected to a secret room with a radius of 5 feet. This secret room was the hot spring, and the surrounding walls were embedded with moonstones. There were many rare gems scattered in the hot spring pool. The warm water in the pool was emitting steam in spirals, and the hundreds of gems at the bottom of the pool were emitting colorful brilliance, releasing invisible spiritual energy and power. Ji Tianxing carried Yin Yao to the side of the pool and gently helped her take off her white dress bit by bit. Yin Yao lowered her head in embarrassment. Her cheeks were flushed, and her pair of sparkling earlobes had also turned pink. After a while, the two of them took off their clothes and stepped into the hot spring together. Ji Tianxing didn't tease Yin Yao anymore. He sat side by side with her in the pool, silently thinking about something. A few years ago, when the two of them were still in the Sky Pillar sect, they had also soaked in the hot spring together. However, at that time, the two of them hadn't confirmed their relationship, nor were they married. What happened that night was also a beautiful misunderstanding. Now, the two of them were in the same hot spring, and their identities were different. The two of them were officially husband and wife. There was no need to hide anymore, let alone hide. Ji Tianxing looked at Yin Yao gently, enjoying the perfect and graceful scenery. This was the first time the two of them were naked to each other. Ji Tianxing feasted his eyes, and he was quite amazed in his heart. Yin Yao's beauty was truly the product of the heavens and earth. She was as beautiful as the sun and moon. From head to toe, every part of her body was perfect. She was so beautiful that it shook one's soul, causing one to be captivated by it. She was simply a masterpiece of the creator. 15 minutes later, the two of them had washed their bodies and minds, and their emotions were soothed and calmed down. Previously, Yin Yao had been lowering her head and hugging her arms, blocking the most impressive scenery. Now that her emotions had calmed down, she no longer hid anything from Ji Tianxing. She allowed him to pull her into his arms and snuggle up to him intimately. Ji Tianxing's eyes became more and more passionate, and his body temperature kept rising. Yin Yao's cheeks were already red, and her eyes were a little misty. Thus, Ji Tianxing carried her out of the hot spring. After circulating his energy to evaporate the water droplets all over their bodies, the two of them lay on the warm and pleasant jade bed. Ji Tianxing carried Yin Yao with one hand and pulled up the quilt with the other. Then, he began a wonderful exploration under the quilt. Yin Yao couldn't restrain her shyness, so she waved her hand and sent out a spiritual light to extinguish all the gemstone lights in the room. When the room fell into darkness and silence, she began to respond to Ji Tianxing's exploration. Not long after, Yin Yao let out a slightly painful groan, and the two of them no longer had any gap between them, and they entered a wonderful and tender land together. The dimly lit room was filled with a warm and romantic atmosphere. Good times were always short. Ji Tianxing had been tormenting her for the whole night, but he was still a little unsatisfied. He had played with every beautiful scenery to his heart's content. It wasn't until dawn, when Yin Yao was a little tired, that he stopped his invasion and fell asleep quietly with her in his arms. Yin Yao nestled in his arms meekly and stared at him quietly. She felt his breathing and aura, and her emotions were complicated. Tianxing, from today onwards, we really belong to each other. You and I are a real husband and wife. We breathe together, share a destiny, and there is no barrier between us. In this life, no one and nothing can separate us. Chapter 1691. For the next few days, the Luotian mountain was very peaceful. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao stayed in the Cloud Water Palace, and no one came to disturb them. Every day during the day, the two of them would look at the scenery on the Luotian mountain, watch the sunrise and sunset, and talk about the past. At night, the two of them would sleep in the same room and immerse themselves in infinite tenderness and love, enjoying the wonderful moment. This kind of peaceful life was what Ji Tianxing yearned for the most. Most importantly, he could accompany Yin Yao day and night, and it was very happy and sweet. It was no exaggeration to say that in his short 20-odd years of life, these few days were the happiest days for him. On the morning of the fifth day, in the Cloud Dragon Palace deep in the Luotian mountain, in an exquisite and elegant secret room, Grandma Long was standing respectfully and staring at a diamond-shaped gem on the stone table in front of her. The gem lit up with white light and condensed into a light screen the size of a table. A graceful blue figure appeared in the silver-white light screen. It was a young woman in an ice-blue dress, and she had a noble, elegant, and holy temperament. From her face, she seemed to be in her 20s. But on her peerlessly beautiful face was a pair of clear and deep eyes that were like a sea of stars, and they contained wisdom and experience that could see through everything. Her temperament was cold and holy, and she was as graceful as a swimming dragon. She was like a cloud that covered the moon, and she was like snow that drifted in the wind. She frowned and looked at Grandma Long with sparkling eyes. She asked gently, "The number one God's disciple of the vast divine nation is Yin Yao's husband? In order to be with Yin Yao, he is willing to join the Luotian mountain?" Granny Long nodded with a smile and said respectfully, reporting to the Divine Lord, "That is indeed the case. I have interacted with Ji Tianxing a few times, and I can be sure that this is not a conspiracy." Ji Tianxing said that he joined the God-sealing mountain to find his wife, Yin Yao. The blue-robed woman listened to her explanation, and her brows slowly relaxed. Then, she said with a gratified look on her face, "That's good. This is an unexpected surprise and harvest." That guy named Ji Tianxing was the number one disciple of God in the three kingdoms. He was indeed a rare genius to be able to shine in the conference. Since he is willing to join the Lu Ocean Mountain, we will naturally not reject him. Granny Long, you have to make proper arrangements for him. Let him cultivate in peace on the Lu Ocean Mountain and provide him with as many cultivation resources as possible. If he and Yun Yao can grow up quickly, they will definitely be of great help to me in the future. Maybe they can help me solve that crisis. Granny Long cupped her hands again and reported with a smile, "Don't worry, Divine Lord. This old one has made the necessary arrangements. Ji Tianxing is currently living with Yun Yao in Cloud Water Palace, enjoying the best cultivation environment and treatment." Before she could finish speaking, the woman in the blue dress was startled. Her expression abruptly changed, and her pair of embroidered eyebrows furrowed together. "What? Granny Long, you actually let them live together?" Granny Long was also startled. Then, she explained with a face full of doubts, "Divine Lord, I didn't take the initiative to arrange this. Yun Yao requested this from me. However, they are husband and wife. Their love is stronger than gold. There is nothing wrong with them living together, right?" The woman in the blue dress expression became even worse. She said with a worried look, "If that's the case, aren't they already in the same room?" Granny Long suddenly felt a little embarrassed. She smiled bitterly and said, "Divine Lord, how can I ask about such a private matter? Moreover, they are husband and wife. It is natural for them to sleep together." "Silly." The woman in the blue dress was a little angry. She said with a worried look, "Granny Long, there is something that I didn't tell you. I didn't expect you to make such a big mistake. Yun Yao is different from other disciples of God. She was born extraordinary. In the future, she swore to become a divine spirit that is on par with me. No, she is even stronger than me. It is because of this that I treated her as my own daughter. I gave her the title of the first disciple of God and gave her the title of goddess. However, she is still in the process of awakening and budding. Her 7 souls are not complete yet. Her lifespan is also very short. She must maintain a pure and flawless body to stabilize her life and divine soul. Before her 7 souls are gathered, she must not sleep with a man. Otherwise, there will be a big problem." Granny Long was dumbfounded when she heard this series of secrets. She was stunned and stood there with her mouth open. After a long time, she came back to her senses. She quickly bowed and apologized to the woman in the blue dress. "Divine Lord, I was foolish to make such a big mistake and hurt Yun Yao. Please punish me, Divine Lord." Granny Long was really panicking. Her expression and eyes were full of worry and regret. She knew how important Yun Yao was to the Divine Lord. She also knew how angry and worried the Divine Lord was at this moment. The woman in the blue dress took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in her heart. She waved her hand and said, "Those who don't know are not guilty. It is I who concealed this information. I don't blame you." According to Yun Yao, she and Ji Tianxing got married 2 years ago. However, before that, she had always been a pure virgin. She did not consummate her marriage with Ji Tianxing. Therefore, the situation may not be as bad as we think. Maybe they were busy cultivating and did not consummate their marriage. After all, martial artists who have reached this level of strength don't have much interest in matters of love. Granny Long was relieved. She nodded and said, "I hope so. However, just in case, I still have to separate them." "Don't worry, Divine Lord. I will go and find Ji Tianxing now and arrange a place for him alone." The woman in the blue dress shook her head and said seriously, "This is not appropriate. They are a legitimate couple. What reason do you have to separate them? You can only use Yun Yao as an excuse to take her away temporarily and separate her from Ji Tianxing for half a month with the excuse of imparting a secret technique to her. In addition, I will send a heavenly official to the Lu Ocean Mountain to accompany Yun Yao and check on Yun Yao's condition. Heavenly official Luo Li has a good relationship with Yun Yao. They are like sisters. It is more suitable for her to handle this matter than you." Granny Long nodded and bowed respectfully. "I understand. Don't worry, Divine Lord." The woman in the blue dress nodded and sighed worriedly. "Yun Yao, oh Yun Yao, I have spent decades of effort to get you to where you are today. Don't lose the big picture because of a small matter and ruin my final plan. Granny Long looked at the screen quietly. She frowned and thought about the Divine Lord's words. However, she was confused. She did not know what kind of shocking plan the Divine Lord had. She only knew that Yun Yao was extremely important to the Divine Lord. She could not lose her. After a while, the woman in the blue dress turned and left, disappearing from the screen. The white screen dissipated and the gem returned to normal. Chapter 1692. The sun was only high in the sky, and the sun was shining brightly. The entire peak of Luotian Mountain was immersed in peace and harmony. In Yun Yao's room in the Cloud Water Palace, Ji Tianxing was still hugging Yun Yao as he rested on the bed and chatted with her with his eyes closed. Yun Yao's long hair was messily draped over her shoulders, and a hint of tiredness appeared on her beautiful face. Seeing Ji Tianxing enjoying himself, she asked, "Husband, it's already high in the sky. Aren't we going to get up? If we continue to laze around in bed, Black Eagle and those maids will laugh behind our backs again. You've been indulging in pleasure for the past few days. I'm afraid your body won't be able to take it." Ji Tianxing looked at her with a smile and reached out to caress her cheek. He teased, "We've been through so many hardships, and we've almost lost our lives countless times. It wasn't easy to get today's peace and happiness. How can I not cherish it? Who asked my wife to be so perfect and as beautiful as a fairy? Not to mention 5 days, even 500 days won't be enough for me. As for my husband's body, it will never get tired. If it weren't for the fact that you're getting more and more tired these past few days, your husband would just want to stay in bed with you for half a month." Yun Yao's cheeks turned red from his indecent words, and her eyes were covered with a thick layer of shyness. Don't talk nonsense again." Shameless, as she spoke, she turned her back to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing was about to coax her when Black Eagle's voice came from outside the room. "Master, Granny Long has something to discuss with you. She's waiting for you in the study." Suddenly hearing this news, Yun Yao hurriedly picked up the belly band and dress at the bedside and began to put on her clothes. "Tianxing, we should get up. Granny Long came to see me. We can't let her wait too long. Otherwise, it'll be so embarrassing." Ji Tianxing stopped teasing her and began to get up and put on his clothes. After a while, Yun Yao got dressed and went to wash up. When she was done, she left the bedroom and went to the study to see Granny Long. Ji Tianxing got up slowly and washed up. After he was done, he made a cup of spirit tea and sat in the living room waiting for Yun Yao to come back. About a quarter of an hour later, he finished a cup of tea and Yun Yao returned to the living room. "Tianxing, I have something to tell you." Yun Yao walked up to Ji Tianxing and said. Ji Tianxing looked at her hesitant expression and raised his eyebrows. Yao, what's the matter?" Yun Yao hesitated for a moment before explaining. "Grandma Long came to find me because she wanted to teach me a secret technique. If I want to master this secret technique, I have to go to the Ice Spirit Cave in the back mountain with her and cultivate in seclusion for at least half a month." Ji Tianxing nodded his head without hesitation. Yao, if you want to learn that secret technique, you can go with Grandma Long, but if I leave, no one will be with you." Yun Yao looked at him apologetically. Ji Tianxing immediately waved his hand with a smile. "Don't worry about me. We've been apart for a year, and I've already persevered. Why would I care about half a month? After you go into seclusion, I'll also go into seclusion for half a month. Isn't that enough?" Only then did Yun Yao reveal a faint smile. She nodded and said, "Thank you, husband. I'll go now." Go ahead." Ji Tianxing nodded with a smile and personally escorted her out of the Cloudwater Palace. After Yun Yao left, he also entered the secret chamber and began to busy himself. The heaven and earth spirit Qi was extremely dense in the secret chamber. In the corner of the secret chamber, there was a large cloud of 5-colored spirit Qi floating in the air. 5-colored spirit Qi constantly dripped down, forming a pool of spirit Qi in the corner. There were countless secret compartments on the surrounding walls that stored vast amounts of spirit Qi, and other resources. In the middle of the secret chamber, there was a spirit jade throne with a 7-leaf white lotus that could assist in cultivation. Ji Tianxing sat cross-legged on the throne, holding a spirit jade glazed bottle with both hands. He was absorbed in it. Inside the spirit jade glazed bottle, there was a weak divine soul floating quietly. Ji Tianxing stared at the divine soul for a long time, but he didn't find any signs of the divine soul growing or awakening. Sigh. It seems that the divine soul left by the white dragon god is too weak. It can't recover on its own. I can only find a way to help it recover its strength and awaken it as soon as possible. After muttering a few words, he used his spiritual perception to ask, Burial of Heaven, is there any way to help the white dragon god's divine soul recover as soon as possible? Burial of Heaven had already been awakened by him. It said in a low voice, There is a way. Just like what I did back then, I have to constantly absorb heaven and earth spirit chi or dermic powers to slowly recover. Especially some rare treasures, spirit herbs, and so on, the effects are more obvious. Upon hearing its words, Ji Tianxing had an idea. He hurriedly rummaged through his interspatial ring. Moments later, he took out a spirit fruit that was as red as fire from his interspatial ring. He held it in his palm and examined it. This spirit fruit was only the size of a thumb. It was glowing with a red light and contained an astonishing amount of spirit chi and power. Ji Tianxing smiled and said, Previously in the ruins of God, Old Man of God gave me this vermilion fruit, but I didn't have the time to refine it. If I can refine this vermilion fruit, I can immediately break through to the 9th level of the essence soul realm and even reach the half-step tribulation transcendence realm. However, with my own cultivation, I can also break through very quickly. This vermilion fruit is too convenient for White Dragon. Before he could finish speaking, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. Are you sure you want to use this vermilion fruit to help Little White recover her spirit power? Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment before he asked, Why not? This vermilion fruit is a top spirit treasure. Even martial sages would fight for it. Wouldn't its effects be even more powerful? Silly, Burial of Heaven said unhappily. If you use this vermilion fruit, you can indeed help Little White recover some of her spirit power. However, this is too extravagant and wasteful. The greatest effect of the vermilion fruit is to increase one's cultivation, stabilize one's soul, and raise one's spirit aptitude. Isn't your wife's soul missing? You can make the best use of this vermilion fruit if you let her consume it. Ji Tianxing finally understood the reason and hurriedly kept the vermilion fruit. In that case, I'll definitely leave it for Yao Yao. With that said, he looked at the glass bottle in his hand and smiled apologetically. White Dragon, it's not that I can't bear a part with it, but the vermilion fruit is really not suitable for you. However, don't worry, I'll do my best to help you recover your spirit power. With that said, he took out a huge amount of spirit stones, gems, elixir materials, and so on, and stuffed them all into the glass bottle. He cast a spell to activate the array formation in the glass bottle and gradually refine the spirit stones, elixirs, and materials, transforming them into pure spirit chi of heaven and earth to nourish White Dragon's remnant soul. After doing all this, he put away the glass bottle and began to cultivate in peace. The azure with divine power that Old Man of God had given him was still hidden in his body and had not been completely refined. Chapter 1693. For half a month, Ji Tianxing cultivated in seclusion in a secret chamber. Yun Yao followed Granny Long to cultivate her secret techniques in the ice spirit cave behind the mountain. During this period, Yi Qing Luo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zhou Bin visited Cloudwater Palace. They either sought out Yun Yao or sought out Ji Tianxing to resolve their doubts. Unfortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were cultivating in seclusion. The trio could only return empty-handed. On the morning of the 16th day, Ji Tianxing ended his seclusion and left the secret chamber. Last night, he had completely refined the azure with divine power and naturally broke through the bottleneck to reach the 9th level of the essence soul realm. Now that he was out of seclusion, his essence, chi, and spirit were at their peak. His strength was more than twice as strong as before. After leaving the secret chamber, he went to the living room. When he saw Black Eagle standing guard in the living room, he asked, Black Eagle, has Yao Yao returned? Black Eagle bowed to him and answered truthfully, Young Master Ji, Master went to the Ice Spirit Cave with Granny Long and has yet to return. If Master wants to cultivate the secret technique, I'm afraid it'll take some time. Please wait patiently. Okay. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and said calmly, I'm not in a hurry. She will naturally return after she finishes her cultivation. By the way, has anyone come to look for Yun Yao and me in the past half a month? Black Eagle cupped his hands and reported, Young Master Ji, Yiqing Luo, Lu Xiaoming, and Zhou Bin have all come. Yiqing Luo came to look for Master. Lu Xiaoming and Zhou Bin wanted to seek your guidance on some cultivation problems. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, Okay, got it. The next time they come to look for me, please inform me. With that said, he left the living room and returned to his bedroom to meditate. Having just broken through to the 9th level of the Essence Soul realm, he still needed to cultivate for a few days to stabilize his realm and solidify his martial foundation. Soon, a day passed. The next morning, Ji Tianxing was still meditating when he was awakened by the sound of footsteps outside his room. As soon as he got up and walked out of the bedroom, he saw Heiying supporting Yin Yao and walking quickly towards the door. Yin Yao's face was a little pale. She frowned in pain and staggered a little. She seemed to be suffering and tormenting. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly went up and asked with concern, Yao Yao, what's wrong? What happened? Tianxing. Yin Yao looked up at him and comforted him in a weak voice. Don't worry, I'm fine. Quickly enter the room to rest. Ji Tianxing hurriedly supported her and brought her into the room, allowing her to lie on the jade bed. After Yin Yao lay down, he looked at Heiying and asked with a frown, Heiying, what's going on? Heiying did not dare to hide anything and hurriedly answered, reporting to young Master Ji, Granny Long just sent Master back. Master just returned to the palace and became like this. This subordinate also does not know what exactly is going on. Ji Tianxing frowned and looked at Yun Yao with concern. Yao Yao, didn't Granny Long bring you to the Ice Spirit Cave to teach you? Did you get injured while practicing martial arts? Or did Granny Long do something to you? Yin Yao shook her head gently. Her lips were pale and bloodless. She said in a weak voice, Tianxing, it's not Granny Long's fault. It's my body that's in trouble. Let me see where you're injured. Ji Tianxing reached out and held her wrist. He sent a strand of his divine sense into her body to check on her condition. Soon, his divine sense wandered around Yun Yao's body and carefully checked it. To his surprise, Yun Yao's body did not have any abnormalities. It was very normal. How could this be? Ji Tianxing frowned in confusion. He was unwilling to give up and checked again. Yin Yao saw that he was worried and anxious. She comforted him gently. Tianxing, don't worry too much. I'm really fine. For the past half a month, I've been in seclusion with Granny Long in the Ice Spirit Cave. Every 2 or 3 days, my condition would act up. I just need to rest for half a day, and I'll be able to recover on my own. Ji Tianxing looked at her with concern and asked, Yao Yao, were you feeling unwell? I just checked on you. There's nothing wrong with your body. Could it be that there's something wrong with your primordial spirit? Yin Yao pursed her lips. She neither nodded nor denied it. Ji Tianxing immediately guessed that there was something wrong with her soul. After all, her soul was incomplete. She was different from ordinary martial artists. She only had a few years left to live. He was about to cast a spell to check on Yun Yao's primordial spirit. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from outside the door. It was followed by the Golden Dragon's voice. Master, young Master Ji, Granny Long, and Lord Heavenly Official have come to visit. Suddenly hearing this news, Ji Tianxing turned his head to look outside the door and frowned in confusion. Lord Heavenly Official? Is she from the Kingdom of Gods? The female official by the Divine Master's side? Yin Yao revealed a faint smile and nodded. Yes, Lord Heavenly Official's name is Luo Li. She's a very good friend of mine. We're like sisters. Tianxing, I can't get up to greet them. Please greet them for me. When she finished speaking, Granny Long and Lord Heavenly Official Luo Li had already crossed the door and entered the room. Lord Heavenly Official Luo Li walked in front. She was a young woman wearing an icicle dress and a blue crystal crown on her head. She was tall and slender, with a gentle and beautiful face. She had a fair oval face and a pair of bright eyes like autumn water. Her temperament was elegant and refined. Her whole body was filled with a noble, elegant, and gentle aura. Granny Long followed behind her. Her wrinkled face was filled with worry and anxiety. When Luo Li entered the room, she stared at Yun Yao, who was lying on a bed. She said with concern, "Yao Yao, you're not feeling well. Lie down and rest." Yun Yao turned to look at her. She supported her body with her hands and tried to sit up. Luo Li hurriedly walked over and pressed down on her shoulders, making her lie down again. Ji Tianxing cupped his hands towards Luo Li and Granny Long. He said, "Greetings, Lord Heavenly Official." "Greetings, Granny Long." Granny Long nodded slightly in greeting, while Luo Li stared at him with a complicated look in her eyes. Ji Tianxing could vaguely feel that Luo Li's impression of him was a little subtle. She seemed to hate and blame him. However, because Yun Yao was present, she didn't show it. Luo Li was silent for a moment. She then nodded and said, "You're Yao Yao's husband, young master, Ji Tianxing?" "That's right," Ji Tianxing replied. He then asked in a low voice, "May I know why Lord Heavenly Official Luo is looking for Yao Yao?" Luo Li looked at Yun Yao and said in a serious tone, "I'm here to see Yao Yao on the orders of the Lord Heavenly Official." The Lord Heavenly Official had already expected that Yao Yao would have a problem. I didn't expect that I would still be a step too late. Chapter 1694. Ji Tianxing was worried about Yun Yao's health, so he didn't want to leave. However, he guessed that Luo Li might have something to say to Yun Yao alone. Therefore, he nodded and left the room. After he left, only Yun Yao, Luo Li, and Grandma Long were left in the room. Yun Yao looked at Luo Li with a complicated expression and asked, "Luo Li, how did the Divine Master know that there would be a problem with my body?" A bitter smile appeared on Luo Li's face as she sighed. "Yao Yao, you're the clearest about your body's condition. You were alone in the past, so there wouldn't be any problems. However, your husband is here, and the two of you are living together. The Divine Master knew that Ji Tianxing was here, so he had a bad premonition. Therefore, he sent me to see you. I didn't expect the Divine Master to be right." Hearing her words, Yun Yao frowned and asked in disbelief, "Luo Li, do you mean that my body's condition is related to Tianxing?" "Of course." Luo Li nodded and asked in a low voice, "Yao Yao, there are no outsiders here. Let me ask you, have you consummated your marriage with young Master Ji?" This, Yun Yao's expression was a little unnatural, and she said in a strange tone, "Tianxing is my husband. It's natural for me to consummate my marriage with him." Sigh. Luo Li sighed and revealed an expression that said, "I knew it. Yao Yao, if your soul was normal, it wouldn't be a problem for you to consummate your marriage with young Master Ji. However, you should be clear about your soul's condition. Before your soul recovers, you can't consummate your marriage. You must maintain your virginity. Otherwise, you will end up like this." Hearing her words, Yun Yao understood the reason for her body's problem. Granny Long's face was also full of worry, and she said earnestly, "Yun Yao, half a month ago, this old one reported to the God Lord about Ji Tianxing. At that time, the Divine Master was worried that there would be a problem, so he sent Divine Official Luo to check on the situation. I brought you to the Ice Spirit Cave to cultivate so that you can temporarily separate from Ji Tianxing, so as to avoid any more serious consequences. But I didn't expect that you would have already." Sigh. Although Luo Li and Grandma Long's hearts were heavy, Yun Yao didn't have the slightest bit of regret. She calmly looked at the two of them and comforted them. "Luo Li, Grandma Long, you don't have to worry about me. My body is fine. I'll be fine after resting for a while." Luo Li waved her hand and said in a serious tone, "Yao Yao, don't jump to conclusions so quickly. I'll check your body first and make sure of the situation before we talk." With that, she took out a dark gold medicine box from her spatial ring. After opening the medicine box, she took out a green skin gourd, a bag of golden divine needles, and a palm-sized black turtle shell. Then, she formed a spell with both hands and shot out a ray of white light. It was like a thread that entered Yun Yao's body. Then, she used the golden divine needles to open the green-skinned gourd and released a drop of five-color divine liquid. Luo Li was busy for 15 minutes before she finally found out about Yun Yao's condition. She slowly stopped and put away the medicine box. Then, she looked at Yun Yao with a serious expression. Yao Yao, your situation is very dangerous. You have to be treated in time. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. When she finished speaking, the door was pushed open by Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing's thick eyebrows were tightly knitted. He stepped into the room with a worried expression and asked, Divine Official Luo, what's wrong with Yao Yao? Luo Li glanced at him and said in a low voice, Since you've heard it, I'll tell you the truth. Yun Yao's innate soul is missing, so her lifespan is limited. Her body's condition is different from ordinary people. If she keeps her virginity, she'll be fine. Before she reaches the end of her lifespan, she can fuse with a new divine pearl and extend her lifespan. But now, the two of you are in the same room. The balance of her body is broken, and there's a problem with her soul. Now, her 3 spiritual souls and 2 physical souls have been separated. So, she often faints, and her soul is in great pain. Moreover, her soul will backfire, and it will constantly devour her magic power and primordial spirit. If we don't treat her in time, her power will quickly decline, and her primordial spirit will gradually disappear. Luo Li's expression and tone became more and more serious as she spoke. Ji Tianxing and Grandma Long also looked worried. Everyone was silent for a moment. The atmosphere in the room was heavy and depressing. Ji Tianxing looked at Luo Li expectantly and asked, Divine Official Luo, you're the Divine Master's female official. You're proficient in medicine. Do you have any way to treat Yun Yao? Luo Li thought for a moment and said, The most important thing now is to find some top-notch elixirs that can stabilize the soul and nourish the primordial spirit. First, we have to stabilize Yun Yao's soul and primordial spirit. Then, I have to go back to the God's Kingdom and report Yun Yao's situation to the Divine Master. With the Divine Master's permission, I can open the treasury and take out a dozen top-notch treasures to refine healing elixirs for Yun Yao. However, this process is very long. It will take more than 20 days to go back and forth from here to the God's Kingdom. It will take me 4 months or even half a year to refine a Saint-grade elixir. However, with Yun Yao's body condition, I'm afraid it won't last that long. Grandma Long was stunned when she heard this. Then, she quickly asked Luo Li, Divine Official Luo, there are a few top-notch treasures in the treasury of the Luotian Mountain. I'll go get them now and help Yun Yao stabilize her soul. Luo Li raised her eyebrows and asked, Which treasures? Grandma Long quickly replied, There's divine moon grass, withered heart golden orchid, pure sun transverse fruit. She named 6 or 7 heavenly materials and earthly treasures in one breath. However, after Luo Li heard this, she shook her head with a face full of regret. Grandma Long, these treasures all have different effects, but none of them can stabilize a soul's injury. What should we do? Grandma Long immediately frowned and said anxiously, Where am I supposed to find these treasures in such a hurry? Just as everyone was filled with anxiety and was at their wits' end, Ji Tianxing took out a red spiritual fruit from his interspatial ring and handed it to Luo Li. Divine Official Luo, use this red fruit to stabilize Yao Yao's soul's injury first. Luo Li's gaze fell on the red fruit. After looking at it carefully, a surprised expression appeared on her face. It really is a red fruit. Moreover, it's a top-notch red fruit. This is great. Not only can the divine red fruit increase one's cultivation and nourish the soul, but it can also increase the aptitude of the soul. This is the treasure that Yun Yao needs the most, especially this top-notch red fruit. It needs to grow for 1,000 years before it matures. Its effect is 5 times stronger than an ordinary red fruit. Ji Tianxing, where did you get such a top-notch red fruit? Chapter 1695. Since Luo Li asked, Ji Tianxing didn't plan to hide it. This vermilion fruit was given to me by the old man before I left the ruins of God. Luo Li's eyes flashed as she looked at Ji Tianxing meaningfully. That's right. She had also heard of Ji Tianxing being chosen by the old man of the divine ruins. Although she didn't know the details, she knew what it meant for Ji Tianxing to be chosen by the old man. Luo Li took the vermilion fruit and said to Granny Long, "Granny, please go to the treasury of the Luotian mountain and take out the purple heartgrass, golden leaf lotus, thunderfire pill, and glazed red sandalwood. I want to use these 4 supplementary herbs to help Yin Yao absorb the vermilion fruit's medicinal energy. Only then can the vermilion fruit's effects be maximized." When Granny Long heard this, she quickly nodded in agreement. She turned and left the room, rushing towards the treasury. Luo Li then said to Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, "Yao Yao, young Master Ji, although this vermilion fruit can protect Yao Yao's safety in the short term, it's not a long-term solution. Young Master Ji, if you really want to protect Yao Yao, you have to control yourself in the future. Before Yao Yao's 7 spirits return, you can't sleep with her. That's harming her." Ji Tianxing nodded and asked, "Divine Official Luo, you mean to say that if we want to solve Yao Yao's problem, we have to help her gather her 7 spirits?" "Yes." Luo Li nodded and explained, "Normal people have 3 spiritual souls and 7 physical souls. Their souls are stable and flawless, but Yao Yao only has 3 spiritual souls and 2 physical souls. It's extremely unstable." Ji Tianxing nodded and said in a low voice, "If that's the case, then I'll do my best to find the other 5 Neptunian divine pearls as soon as possible and help Yao gather her 7 spirits." 5 Neptunian divine pearls? Luo Li frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing strangely. "Young Master Ji, you probably have some misunderstanding about the divine pearls. You don't understand them well enough, right? Yao Yao's first spirit was formed from the Neptunian divine pearl. But the second pearl she fused with wasn't called the Neptunian divine pearl, but star. The other 5 divine beads also had different names and contained different laws and powers, such as longevity, nirvana, heaven, and earth." "Oh, so that's how it is." Ji Tianxing revealed a surprised expression as he looked at Luo Li. He knew Shui Luo knew the divine pearls of the divine pearls. Since Luo knew, Luo Li knew it was Luo Li. Since martial god Luo Shui was willing to tell Luo Li such a secret, it could be seen how much martial god Luo Shui trusted and relied on her. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing tried to ask, "Divine Official Luo, I'm new here, so I'm not familiar with the situation in the Luo River God Nation. Even if I wanted to find the other 5 divine pearls, I didn't know where to start. Do you know any information or clues? I'll be grateful if you can tell me." Luo Li frowned and thought for a while. Countless pieces of information flashed through her mind. After a long while, a thought suddenly flashed through her mind as she recalled a piece of information. "All right, I remember now. There's an extremely strange place. It's called the 100-Flower Valley. It's said that divine light often flashes in the valley. It's fleeting and makes countless people guess. However, the 100-Flower Valley's terrain is dangerous and mysterious. In a year, the 100-Flower Valley is hidden and invisible most of the time. It's impossible to find. I've analyzed the various legends and phenomena of the 100-Flower Valley. There must be a divine item there. It might be related to the divine pearls. Young Master Ji, if you don't mind, you can try your luck there." After she finished, Ji Tianxing asked without any hesitation, "Divine Official Luo, may I ask where the 100-Flower Valley is? Do you have a map or a route?" Luo Li rummaged through her space ring for a while and found an old yellow map. She handed it to Ji Tianxing. "I do have a map. It's not too difficult to find. It's in the Phantom Mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire. It'll take about half a month from Luotian Mountain to the Phantom Mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire." Before Luo Li could finish, Yin Yao shook her head and said to Ji Tianxing, "Tianxing, I forbid you to go. The Phantom Mountain range is one of the most dangerous places in the Divine Kingdom. Demons and monsters run rampant there. It's very dangerous and mysterious. Not to mention that we're only in the primordial soul realm. Even a tribulation realm powerhouse might lose his life if he rashly enters the Phantom Mountain range. Luoli also showed an apologetic look to Ji Tianxing. She nodded and said, "Young Master Ji, Yao Yao is right. In the past few thousand years, many warriors have entered the Phantom Mountain range. However, 8 or 9 out of 10 of them had either gone missing or lost their lives. Very few of them have come out alive, and very few of them have gained anything. Over time, the Phantom Mountain range's notoriety has spread far and wide. Fewer and fewer warriors have gone there to explore and adventure." Ji Tianxing listened quietly, but he still insisted on his opinion. He said in a firm tone, "Yao Yao, no matter how dangerous the Phantom Mountain range is, I have to go there. As long as there's a glimmer of hope that I can help you find the Divine Pearl, I won't give up. Even if I have to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, I won't back down. Just like when I helped you find the Sun Moon Divine Pearl in the Sun Moon Furnace. The Sun Moon Furnace is the most dangerous place in the world. When have I ever been afraid of it? But I don't want you to risk your life." Yin Yao frowned and looked at Ji Tianxing. Her eyes were full of worry. Ji Tianxing walked to her and held her weak hands. He said in a gentle but firm tone, "Yao Yao, don't try to persuade me anymore. I made up my mind. You just focus on healing your body and wait for my good news." Yin Yao considered for a while. She looked at him and said in an unquestionable tone, "Tianxing, if you insist on going, I won't stop you. But I want to go with you. We, husband and wife, will share blessings and hardships together. No matter what kind of difficulties we will face them together." Ji Tianxing knew her well. He knew that she was soft on the outside but tough on the inside. Once she had made up her mind, she wouldn't change her mind easily. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and said, "Okay, I promise you." Luoli stood at the side and watched the scene quietly. Her eyes flashed with a strange light as she sighed in her heart. At this moment, she finally understood why Yun Yao was so loyal to Ji Tianxing and treated him as her own life. If there was a handsome and talented young man who loved me so much and didn't hesitate to sacrifice everything to protect me, I'm afraid that I would fall into his hands and treat him as the closest person to me. I wouldn't hold anything back, right? This thought flashed in Luo Li's mind. She looked at Ji Tianxing with a gentle gaze. Unknowingly, her impression of Ji Tianxing had changed. Chapter 1696. Not long after, Granny Long returned with 4 types of elixirs and gave them to Luo Li. Luo Li took out a Saint-grade pill furnace and started to refine the elixirs on the spot. Under her control, the 4 types of elixirs fused with the vermilion fruit, catalyzing the effects of the vermilion fruit. 6 hours later, she refined a dark red pill and gave it to Yun Yao to consume. After Yun Yao consumed the pill, the elixir spread throughout her body, quickly healing her soul and stabilizing it. Luo Li personally used her boundless magic power to help Yun Yao heal her injuries. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long waited outside the room. Unknowingly, half a day passed. When night fell, Luo Li finished her cultivation and opened the door. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long hurriedly entered the room and saw Yun Yao lying on the bed, sleeping peacefully. Her breathing was stable, and her furrowed brows were relaxed. Obviously, she was no longer in pain. Ji Tianxing hurriedly asked Luo Li, "Divine Official Luo, how are Yao Yao's injuries?" Luo Li revealed a gratified smile and nodded. "That vermilion fruit is very old, and its effects are very powerful. It has already helped Yao Yao stabilize her soul and heal her injuries. At least for the next 4 months, Yao Yao's injuries won't relapse, and she won't suffer any backlash. Don't worry." Ji Tianxing heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly bowed to her. He said in a sincere tone, "Thank you, Divine Official Luo, for saving my life. I can't thank you enough." Luo Li gently shook her head and said in a gentle tone, "You don't have to thank me. Yun Yao and I are like sisters. Saving her is my duty. Moreover, if it wasn't for your vermilion fruit, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Yao Yao is asleep now, so don't disturb her. She will wake up in about 2 days. I still have to rush back to the God Kingdom to report this matter to the Divine Master and prepare to refine elixirs for Yao Yao. I won't accompany you." As she spoke, Luo Li put away the medicine box and pill cauldron and was about to leave. Ji Tianxing and Granny Long walked her out of the room. Arriving at the entrance of the Cloud Water Palace, Luo Li stopped in her tracks. With a solemn expression, she exhorted, "All right, young Master Ji, if possible, try not to let Yao Yao go to the Mirage Mountain Range. For the next few months, it's best to let her recuperate in the palace. Try your best not to engage in any fights, so as to avoid any accidents that might cause injuries." Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "I will try my best to persuade him. Goodbye." Luo Li didn't say anything more. She cupped her hands towards him and Granny Long before turning around and flying into the sky. After a short 10 breaths, her figure disappeared into the horizon. After sending Luo Li off, Granny Long said a few words to Ji Tianxing before taking her leave. Ji Tianxing returned to his residence alone. He stayed in the bedroom and guarded Yun Yao closely. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. On the morning of the 3rd day, the sun had just risen. A ray of warm sunlight shone into the room through the window. Ji Tianxing sat by the bed and meditated, constantly paying attention to Yun Yao's movements. At this moment, Yun Yao, who had slept for 2 days and 2 nights, finally woke up. She slowly opened her eyes and saw Ji Tianxing sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at her with tender eyes. "Yao Yao, are you feeling better?" Yun Yao slowly sat up and sensed her body's condition. She nodded and said, "I've already recovered. Furthermore, my cultivation has increased tremendously. I've reached a bottleneck and will soon break through." "Yes, this is the effect of the vermilion fruit," Ji Tianxing explained. "The effects of the supreme grade vermilion fruit are the strongest. Not only can it help you stabilize your soul and heal your injuries, it can also increase your cultivation greatly. If you absorb all of the vermilion fruit's medicinal essence, you might not only break through to the 8th level of the primordial spirit realm, but you might even reach the 9th level." Yun Yao revealed a gratified expression and said gently, "Tianxing, thank you. There's no need for thanks between us." Ji Tianxing said with a playful smile, "I wanted to leave alone and go to the phantom mountain range of the mysterious Frost Empire while you were asleep. But I know your nature. After you wake up, you will definitely blame me for making the decision without your permission." Yun Yao revealed a faint smile and rolled her eyes at him. At least you know your place and didn't make the decision without my permission. If you leave me and go to the Phantom Mountain Range alone, I will definitely chase after you." Ji Tianxing took her hand and discussed business with her. "Yao Yao, rest for another day. We will prepare and set off for the Phantom Mountain Range tomorrow." Yun Yao thought for a moment and shook her head. "I'm fine now. My strength is at its peak. I can set off immediately. However, for safety reasons, we have to bring Jinlong and Black Eagle. With them protecting us, the chances of exploring the 100 Flowers Valley will be higher." "Okay, we'll do as you say." Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. Then, Yun Yao got up and walked out of the room to instruct Black Eagle and Jinlong. Ji Tianxing also made some preparations and woke up Qianyu, who was cultivating. Back in the vast Divine Kingdom, Qianyu had swallowed the Moon Fox clan's Divine Moon Stone and had been in a deep sleep. It had been 3 months since the incident. Now that Qianyu had woken up, it had been cultivating in seclusion to refine the divine power in the Divine Moon Stone. Its strength had also increased by dozens of times. It had reached the 4th level of the Essence Soul Realm. After Ji Tianxing explained the situation to it, it carried Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, Black Eagle, and Jinlong out of the Cloudwater Palace. After flying out of the Luotian Mountain, Qianyu flapped its wings and flew east at lightning speed. The mysterious Frost Empire was located in the east of the Luotian Mountain. During the journey, Black Eagle and Golden Dragon guarded Yun Yao closely, vigilantly watching their surroundings. Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing sat side by side on Qianyu's back as they discussed the Mirage Mountain Range. The Mirage Mountain Range was one of the infamous danger zones in the Luo Shui divine kingdom. Yin Yao had some understanding of the region, so she told Ji Tianxing everything she knew. For 15 days, Qianyu traveled without stopping, not knowing what fatigue was. That evening, the group finally arrived at the Mirage Mountain Range. Qianyu was flying above a vast grassland. 300 miles in front of it was an endless mountain range. Looking down from high in the sky, one could see huge mountain ranges that resembled gigantic dragons lying on the ground. Almost every mountain range was boundless, extending from north to south. The dark green mountain ranges were covered in lush primitive forests. It was difficult to see any exposed rocks or soil. Between the mountains was a dense forest. All of them were ancient trees that reached 1,000 feet tall. Occasionally, flocks of birds would appear between the mountain ranges. They were as fast as lightning, disappearing in a flash. The sky above the mountains was covered in a thick, light blue fog, obscuring the depths of the mountain range. Ji Tianxing stared at the mountain range for a moment before his eyes turned grave. He could sense that the seemingly peaceful Mirage Mountain Range was hiding countless ferocious and savage demon beasts. Chapter 1697. After Qianyu entered the Mirage Mountain Range, he flew straight ahead. According to Luo Li's description and the route on the map, Centauria Valley was located in the central region of the Mirage Mountain Range. With Qianyu's speed, it would take him a day and a night to reach the vicinity of Centauria Valley. While flying above the mountain range, Qianyu clearly slowed down and appeared very cautious. The black eagle and golden dragon no longer stayed on his back. They flew to the left and right respectively, vigilantly observing their surroundings. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao also drew their respective swords. They stood side by side on Qianyu's back and looked at the mountains ahead. The first few hours were relatively peaceful and smooth. Even if there were powerful fey beasts or beast hordes in the mountain range, they were intimidated by Qianyu's aura and did not dare to attack. However, as time passed, the group entered the depths of the Mirage Mountain Range and began to encounter danger. The first time they encountered danger was in the valley between two mountain ranges. In the deep valley, there were two giant flying apes lurking. They occupied the entire area. They had strength at the fifth firmament essence, soul realm, and were extremely bloodthirsty and battle-hungry. They had rich combat experience. When they sensed the immense divine power in Qianyu's body, they could not suppress their bloodthirst and launched a brazen attack. This time, there was no need for Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao to take action. The black eagle and golden dragon were the first to discover the danger. In just a few moves, they killed 3 giant flying apes. Ji Tianxing observed the duo's moves and mystic techniques and discovered that they had strength at the 8th firmament essence soul realm. They had mastered powerful mystic techniques. They were more than enough to deal with warriors or fey beasts below the tribulation transcendence realm. After dealing with the giant flying apes, the group continued on their journey. About 2 hours later, Qianyu flew over a 10,000-foot-tall mountain. Danger approached once again. A flock of dark gold, wind-concealing golden condors chased after them from behind and attacked them from all sides. There were 28 wind-concealing golden condors in this flock. Furthermore, they had strength at the 2nd firmament essence, soul realm, and above. Every wind-concealing golden condor had a body 100 feet long. When their massive golden wings spread, they were 200 feet wide. They were extremely fast, like golden streams of light that shimmered in the dusky sky. Their attack power was extremely strong, and they knew how to surround each other and cover each other. Although the black eagle and the golden dragon were loyal to their master and fought desperately against the attack of the group of eagles. But with their strength, it was impossible for them to solve the problem quickly. Hence, Ji Tianxing, Yin Yao, and Qianyu all retaliated. Ji Tianxing used the star-shattering fist with his left hand, sending out a dazzling fist light. Each fist light was able to blast apart a wind-concealing golden eagle. He waved the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand and slashed out a giant golden sword that was over 100 feet long, quickly killing those golden eagles. under his fist and sword. None of the wind concealment golden eagles could withstand a single move. They were all killed instantly. Yin Yao was the same. She waved her heavenly ice divine sword and used a mysterious sword technique to kill the wind concealment golden condors one after another. The two of them calmly stood in the sky, attacking and defending each other. Their coordination was incomparable. No matter how the wind shelter golden eagle attacked, it could not pose a threat to the two of them. Instead, their Dharma spell attacks quickly killed the group of wind concealment golden eagles. The dazzling sword light and the dazzling Dharma spell light intertwined and converged into a colorful glow that covered a radius of dozens of miles. A series of muffled sounds reverberated in the sky like muffled thunder. The wind concealment golden eagles kept screaming and wailing. One after another, they died and were beheaded into pieces of flesh and blood that scattered among the mountains. Qian Yu's performance was also very heroic. Ji Tianxing was impressed. This was the first time it had killed an enemy after breaking through to the essence soul realm. Its power was very vast, as if it was endless. Its speed was also as fast as a stream of light. Every time it released a sky full of ice arrows and blue blades, it would always be able to kill a golden eagle. This battle only lasted for 100 breaths of time before it ended. The 28 wind concealment golden eagles were all killed. Not a single one escaped. After the battle ended, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry to leave. He asked the black eagle and the golden dragon to help him pick up countless essence soul fragments from the devastated battlefield. Those were the essence soul fragments of the wind concealment golden eagles. If left alone, they would dissipate into the world in a few days. However, after Ji Tianxing obtained more than 200 essence soul fragments, he gave them to the burial of heaven. The burial of heaven could devour the essence soul fragments and absorb their power to slowly recover its vitality. After collecting the spoils of war, Ji Tianxing rode Qian Yu and continued to travel in the sky. However, in the battle just now, more than 20 wind concealment golden eagles were killed. Their corpses were turned into pieces of flesh and blood that scattered in the mountains. The commotion of the battle awakened the monsters in the surrounding hundreds of miles. The smell of blood that filled the air stimulated the ferocity of many monsters. As soon as Ji Tianxing and the others left, dozens of monsters swarmed from all directions and began to hunt them down. The monsters that could survive in the depths of the Phantom Mountains were basically at the spirit cultivation realm and above. They had lived for hundreds or thousands of years. The powerful monsters that ruled the territories were all at the essence soul realm. These demonic beasts usually fought with each other, or fought for territory, or snatched spirit veins, treasured lands, and resources. But now, they were united against a common enemy. They saw Ji Tianxing and the others as invaders and worked together to hunt them down. Qian Yu sped through the sky for thousands of miles. In the sky behind him, there was a mighty team. There were at least 200 demonic beasts that had joined in the chase. They were all filled with killing intent. Seeing this, Qian Yu was a little angry and said with murderous intent, "Old Ji, those lowly monsters are really reckless. Why don't we kill them all?" Ji Tianxing shook his head and said indifferently, "It's easy to kill those monsters, but this is the Phantom Mountains. There are too many unknown dangers. If we fight with those monsters, we will definitely be besieged and fall into a difficult battle. By then, more monsters will be alerted and the battle will never stop. It's meaningless and a waste of time. Our main goal is to find the 100-Flower Valley as soon as possible." Qian Yu nodded slightly and said regretfully, "All right, those monsters are lucky. We'll spare their lives for now." Then, he sped up and flew through the sky, rushing to the 100-Flower Valley. Half an hour later, the mighty hunting team was shaken off by it. However, the deeper they went into the mountains, the more dangers they encountered. For the next half a day, they would be attacked by a group of monsters every few tens of thousands of miles. The continuous bloody battles made Qian Yu, Black Eagle, and Golden Dragon bloodthirsty. Their bodies were covered in blood and looked particularly ferocious. Most of it was the blood of monsters, but they were also heavily injured. By the next morning, they had already fought more than 20 battles and killed more than 600 demonic beasts. Everyone's magic power was depleted and they were exhausted. Chapter 1698. On a lush mountain peak, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao sat on a large rock, cleaning the blood and stains on their bodies. Both of them had consumed a lot of their dermic powers, so they took pills to recover their dermic powers. However, Ji Tianxing had gained a lot. He had obtained hundreds of demon beast essence soul fragments. He had given these essence soul fragments to the burial of heaven, which could help the burial of heaven recover a lot of its dermic powers. In the forest, not far away, the golden dragon and the black eagle were sitting under a towering ancient tree, leaning against the tree trunk. Both of them were stained with blood, their hair was messy, and there were at least a dozen wounds on their bodies. They looked quite miserable. Their dermic powers were almost exhausted. The light in their eyes was dim, and their breathing was a little chaotic. Fighting more than 20 battles in a row had almost exhausted their mental and physical strength. Now, they urgently needed to rest. They needed to recuperate for at least a few days to recover. Further away, Qian Yu was sitting on a branch of a towering ancient tree, looking around. At this time, its body had shrunk countless times. It was only 3 feet long. The previous battle had also caused it some minor injuries, and it had consumed a lot of its energy. However, its recovery ability was very strong. Its injuries were quickly healed, and its energy was quickly replenished. Now that Ji Tianxing and the others were resting on the mountain peak, it was on guard for them. However, no one saw that there were 2 pairs of cold, bloodthirsty eyes secretly watching them from the depths of the forest. They were 200-meter long, green, snake-shaped demon beasts. On the surface, they looked like 2 huge pythons with strong and slender bodies, flat and wide heads, and bloody mouths. The green snakes' bodies were as rough as the bark of an old tree. The patterns on their bodies were messy, and they were covered with wash-basin-sized scales. On their flat, triangular heads, there was a protruding black horn, which glowed with a cold light. They had a special innate ability that allowed them to hide in the dense forest, and they were invisible. As they moved through the forest, they did not make any sound or aura. 2 pairs of cold, green eyes stared at the mountain peak, revealing a strong, murderous intent. 5 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 5 kilometers. 2 green pythons were rapidly approaching the peak of the mountain, heading toward Ji Tianxing and the others. In a short span of 10 breaths, the 2 green pythons arrived at the peak of the mountain. They couldn't wait to launch an attack. Their main target was Qian Yu, who was sitting on the tree branch. The divine power fluctuations emanating from Qian Yu's body had a fatal attraction to them. The green python on the left raised its head, its black horn glowing with a dark light, releasing 3 sharp and narrow light blades. Each of the light blades was over 30 meters long, and they were so condensed that they seemed to be solid, like an indestructible giant spear. Swish! Swish! In the blink of an eye, 3 giant black spears appeared in front of Qian Yu and enveloped its body. It immediately sensed the approaching danger. Its body instantly curled up into a ball and turned into an icy blue stream of light, flying to the side. However, no matter how fast its reaction was, it was still 1 step too slow. Pung pung pung. 2 of the 3 pitch-black giant spears missed their target and struck the towering ancient tree. One of the giant spears hit Qian Yu on the spot and sent it tumbling away, letting out a painful groan. It flew thousands of meters in the air before falling into the depths of the forest. Following the deafening explosion, a black shockwave exploded from the peak of the mountain and spread out in all directions. Dozens of towering ancient trees were blown to smithereens on the spot, turning into fine wood shavings. A few huge craters were formed on the ground, and sand and dust were splashed everywhere. The entire 1,000-foot-tall mountain shook violently from the impact of the terrifying power. The sudden change broke the tranquility of the mountain. Ji Tianxing immediately became alert and shouted with a vigilant look, "Demon beast attack! Everyone be careful!" Almost as soon as his voice rang out, the other green python opened its bloody mouth and released two dark green light pillars, one for the golden dragon and the other for the black eagle. The golden dragon and the black eagle had just sensed the danger and were about to launch a counterattack with their weapons. Pung pung. With two dull explosions, the two of them were hit by the dark green light pillars and were sent tumbling away. Two more huge craters appeared in the forest on the peak of the mountain. The violent shock wave exploded and swept across a radius of more than 10 miles, blasting all the towering ancient trees on the peak of the mountain into pieces. At this moment, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already flown into the sky with their swords in hand. Ji Tianxing's eyes and divine sense had also locked onto the two green pythons' auras and determined their location. Damned animals! He roared with a murderous aura and swung the sword of burial of heaven with all his strength, slashing out 7 dark golden sword auras toward the two pythons. 7 stars sword. The golden sword auras pierced through the sky, passing through the dust and debris in the sky and instantly hitting the two pythons. Pung pung. A few muffled sounds burst out, and the two green pythons were sent flying. However, the tough scales on their bodies blocked most of the sword auras and neutralized most of the power. After being knocked back 1,000 feet, they twisted their bodies and flew into the sky, charging toward Qianyu as fast as lightning. Their goal was very clear. They wanted to kill Qianyu and steal his divine power and bloodline. Qianyu had just climbed up from the rubble when he saw the two pythons charging toward him. Therefore, his body flashed with icy blue light and immediately expanded to a length of 1,000 feet. The 12 furry, icy blue tails also released an overwhelming amount of icy blue blades of light towards the two giant pythons. Pung 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 pung. With a series of dull explosions, the two sides engaged in a fierce battle in the sky. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing rushed to the nearby rubble and rescued the golden dragon and the black eagle. The golden dragon and the black eagle were already severely injured. After being attacked by the green pythons, their injuries worsened and they became even more miserable. The two of them endured their injuries and pain and still wanted to fight bravely. However, Ji Tianxing stopped them and put them into the sword world so that they could recuperate. After settling the golden dragon and the black eagle, Ji Tianxing held the burial of heaven's sword and charged toward the two pythons with murderous intent. Yin Yao had already made her move. She waved her sword and stabbed at one of the pythons like a net of swords. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of incomparably sharp cold lights pierced the two giant pythons one after another. However, the bodies of the two giant pythons trembled and emitted a dark green light, but they were not injured at all. With Yin Yao's strength, she could not pose a threat to the two pythons. Noticing this, Ji Tianxing frowned. A cold light flashed in his eyes. This was because he realized that the two pythons' strength had surpassed the essence soul realm. They had reached the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm. They were no longer ordinary pythons. They were evil dragons that had undergone the baptism of the heavenly tribulation and had completed their evolution. Ji Tianxing had to be alert and fight with all his might. Chapter 1699. Following Ji Tianxing's roar, the giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long slashed down from the sky. An evil dragon was attacking Qianyu fiercely, sending Qianyu flying again. Before it could chase after Qianyu, it was hit by the giant golden sword and smashed into the mountain peak from the sky. A huge crack suddenly appeared on the mountain peak that was full of scars, and dust splashed out into the air. A deep wound appeared on the evil dragon's body, and dark green venom and blood splattered out. In pain, it opened its bloody mouth and let out an angry roar. Yin Yao took the opportunity to use her ultimate skill and slashed out a crescent light blade that was hundreds of meters long. Crescent light, sky attack. The silver-white sword light was like a crescent moon falling from the sky, striking the evil dragon with a loud bang. Bam! The evil dragon was hit hard again and smashed into the ruins. Its wound was even bigger. The other evil dragon quickly rushed over and helped its companion to block Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's joint attack. The two sides fought fiercely in the sky. Numerous light blades collided fiercely, exploding with a loud, muffled sound that reverberated in the sky. Dazzling golden, blue, and green lights lit up the dark sky. Violent shock waves swept across the entire mountain peak like a hurricane, blowing up dust and stone fragments. Qianyu, who was severely injured, wandered around the edge of the battlefield, looking for an opportunity to launch a surprise attack. It attacked a few times, and the innate abilities and secret skills it released all hit the two evil dragons. Unfortunately, the difference in strength between it and the two evil dragons was too big, and it could not threaten them. On the other hand, the two evil dragons' counterattacks could always send Qianyu flying after hitting it, and its injuries became even worse. There were a few new wounds on its body that was hundreds of meters long. Blood gushed out like spring water and dyed its icy blue hair. Qianyu's strength was fading. It panted heavily, and its speed became slower and slower. When it was sent flying again by the evil dragons, a huge bloody hole appeared on its back, revealing its white bones. The evil flood dragon's secret attack also contained dark green venom. The poison had corroded Qianyu's wounds and was quickly eating away at his flesh. Half of his body was paralyzed, and he could not move. It had to heal itself as soon as possible and get rid of the poison in its body. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Unfortunately, the two evil flood dragons were coming at him with such ferocious momentum that they didn't give him any time to breathe. Soon, the overwhelming light blades and poisonous water columns were about to drown it. However, it had nowhere to hide and was about to suffer. At this critical juncture, Ji Tianxing finally arrived. He spread his large golden wings and stood in front of Qianyu. Pung, pung, pung. The overwhelming light blades and poisonous water pillars struck the pair of golden wings, causing a loud explosion. The golden wings were completely unscathed and were still shining with a dazzling golden light. Ji Tianxing successfully blocked the attacks of the two flood dragons and took the opportunity to save Qianyu and put it into the sword world. Qianyu, go back and heal yourself quickly. I will take care of these two flood dragons. With Qianyu's strength, it wouldn't be of much help if he continued to fight. Instead, his life would be in danger. If he returned to the sword world to heal himself, Ji Tianxing would be able to fight freely without any scruples. Soon, 100 breaths passed. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao joined forces and fought with the two flood dragons for more than 100 times. The two sides fought back and forth, and the fight was extremely intense. Danger was everywhere. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were extremely talented and had mastered all kinds of mysterious secret techniques. They kept using all kinds of secret techniques and beat the two flood dragons until they were covered in wounds. Blood splattered everywhere. As for themselves, they were protected by powerful Dharma treasures and didn't suffer too much damage. Suddenly, Ji Tianxing seized an opportunity and decisively swung the sword of burial of heaven. A dazzling cold light appeared. Cold sea, pung. With a muffled sound, the flood dragon that was more seriously injured was hit by the sword light. The sword light happened to hit a wound on its tail and cut off its tail on the spot. A 10-meter-long broken tail was wrapped in a large puff of green liquid and blood and flew into the sky. The extreme pain caused the evil flood dragon to let out a painful roar. It opened its bloody mouth recklessly and released a poisonous fog that covered the sky and the sun, covering a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had special physiques and were not afraid of the corrosion of hundreds of poisons. Ji Tianxing took this opportunity to hold the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his strength. Sky-splitting sword. He unleashed his strongest power and slashed out a giant sword that was hundreds of feet long towards the flood dragon. Kaboom! An earth-shattering sound exploded. The flood dragon's head was cut off, and it fell from the sky into the ruins. Its flat and hard head was actually slashed into two, and its body was obliterated on the spot. Countless pieces of flesh mixed with venom and blood splattered in all directions. Swoosh! A green snake-shaped primordial spirit flew out of the corpse and fled to the eastern sky in panic. The other evil flood dragon was also heavily injured. Seeing that its companion's body was cut in half and only a primordial spirit was left, it panicked and quickly turned to escape. You still want to escape? Don't even think about it. A cold light flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes, and he chased after it with a murderous aura. He used the divine concealment step, and his figure flickered in the sky a few times before he caught up with the snake-shaped primordial spirit. Star-shattering fist, he shouted angrily, raised his left palm, and blasted out a silver fist light. The fist shadow that was as huge as a house, with the power to destroy the world, smashed into the snake-shaped primordial spirit. The green snake primordial spirit was blasted into pieces on the spot and scattered in the sky. The primordial spirit fragments of the tribulation stage flood dragon are stronger than the primordial spirits of ordinary demonic beasts, and their effects are also more powerful. Ji Tianxing thought to himself. He waved his hand and shot out a big golden hand to collect all the primordial spirit fragments. Then, he continued to chase after the wounded flood dragon. He cut through the sky at lightning speed and flew to the east. The surviving flood dragon seemed to be scared out of its wits, and its speed was extremely fast. With the speed of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao, they couldn't catch up with it for a while. After a full 100 breaths, the two sides chased each other in the sky for more than 300 miles. It was not until then that Ji Tianxing caught up with the flood dragon. However, just as he was about to attack, the flood dragon fell from the sky and drilled into a deep canyon. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment. Only then did he see clearly that there was a deep and narrow canyon 10 miles in front of him. On the left and right sides of the canyon, there were towering mountains thousands of feet high. Above the canyon, there were layers of clouds and mist, and the air was filled with the strong fragrance of greenwood. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing immediately slowed down and observed with a frown. Chapter 1700. They were surrounded by dark green forests and mountain ranges. Only the Grand Canyon was filled with colorful and dazzling scenes. Ji Tianxing was stunned for a moment, but he immediately understood. That canyon should be the 100-Flower Valley we're looking for. Originally, they were already close to the 100-Flower Valley, but because they had fought too many battles and exhausted their strength, they decided to rest on the mountain peak. Who would have thought that after being attacked by the two flood dragons, they would stumble into the 100-Flower Valley? Ji Tianxing sneered and murmured to himself, I didn't expect that the two dragons that attacked us were demon beasts of the 100-Flower Valley. It seems that the rumors are true. Not only does the 100-Flower Valley have pleasant scenery, it also has fatal dangers and dangers. Yun Yao followed beside him and looked down at the 100-Flower Valley. After observing for a while, she reminded, Tianxing, look at the fog above the canyon. It's probably not ordinary fog. Ji Tianxing nodded. Yes, it should be poisonous fog. There are all kinds of strange flowers and plants in the 100-Flower Valley, most of which are poisonous. Although we have special constitutions and are immune to poison, we still have to be careful. While talking, he flew towards the 100-Flower Valley with Yun Yao. In just 10 breaths, the two landed in the deep 100-Flower Valley. The canyon was 50 kilometers wide and ran north-south. It was unknown how many kilometers long it was. There were majestic mountain ranges on both sides of the valley. Dark green vines and moss crawled on the steep cliffs. The soil on the ground was fertile and moist. It was dark red and gave off a strong smell of rot. Strange flowers of different colors were blooming in the surrounding flowers. Some of them even bore fruit. Clumps of dark red lotus flowers formed a red carpet with a radius of 3,000 meters. Bright red blood mandara flowers were clustered together, quietly blooming and emitting traces of the stench of blood. Budding white jade peony, light purple hyacinths, light yellow evening primroses, pink albizar were scattered on the ground. There were also many forsythia, purple tea, and rarely seen flowers and plants. It was also a scene of colorful flowers. Ji Tianxing flew into the depths of Flower Valley while observing the flowers and plants along the way. He discovered that more than 80% of the flowers and plants were spiritual medicines with extraordinary effects. But for some reason, all the flowers and plants in the Flower Valley were different from the spiritual herbs he knew. They seemed to have mutated and contained a strong poison. He told Yin Yao about his discovery and said via voice transmission, "The flowers and plants in this place look like spirit herbs on the surface, but in fact, all of them are highly toxic. If an ignorant martial artist were to come here and suddenly discover so many precious spirit herbs, they would definitely pick them and then die from poisoning." Yin Yao nodded slightly in agreement and said with a serious expression, "Look at those flowers and plants. They are abnormally strong and tall. They have been growing for at least a few hundred years. If it didn't contain any toxicity, those spirit herbs were all top-notch medicinal herbs." No wonder Luo Li said that there might be some kind of divine item hidden in the 100-Flower Valley. Only the power of a divine item can allow those ordinary flowers and plants to evolve into spirit herbs and grow for hundreds or thousands of years without withering. After pausing for a moment, she added, "The air is also filled with invisible poison that can erode and paralyze a martial artist's consciousness and soul. Although we can resist the corrosion of the poison, we can't stay here for too long. Otherwise, our consciousness and soul will also be damaged, leaving behind wounds that are difficult to heal. Also, I can vaguely feel that there is some kind of divine power in the depths of the valley, as if it is silently calling out to me." Ji Tianxing knew that Yin Yao had fused with 2 divine pearls. As long as she was within the range of the divine pearls, she could sense and connect with them. It seems that Luo Li's deduction is correct. There might be a divine pearl hidden in the depths of 100-Flower Valley? Yin Yao nodded, and a look of anticipation appeared in her eyes. "It should be so, but I don't understand. If there really is a divine pearl here, why would it be hidden here?" Ji Tianxing smiled and explained, "There's no need to dwell on the reason. As long as we can find the divine pearl, we will be extremely lucky. Perhaps the divine pearl was left here, or perhaps it was originally somewhere else and was brought here for some reason. After all, divine monarch Nacre Light has been dead for 30,000 years. In such a long time, the entire world has undergone tremendous changes. The world changes with each passing day. Therefore, it's not strange for the divine pearl to be scattered anywhere in the world." As they spoke, the 2 flew over the thousands of flowers and headed deep into Flower Valley. The deeper they went into Flower Valley, the more lush the flowers and plants on the ground became. Many of the flowers and plants had clearly mutated. Flowers and plants that were originally a foot tall could grow to 3 to 4 meters tall, like large trees. Many palm-sized flowers could grow to the size of a wash basin or even a millstone. Everything was mysterious and strange. What the 2 could confirm was that there was indeed a divine item hidden in the depths of Flower Valley. It was very likely the divine pearl that Yin Yao needed. Ji Tianxing guessed that it was the power of the divine pearl that allowed the flowers and plants in this valley to bloom. Furthermore, the flowers and plants had evolved and mutated, growing for thousands of years. As for why the flowers had mutated from spiritual herbs to poisonous herbs, there was no way to know. Soon, 15 minutes passed. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao traversed more than 50 kilometers in Flower Valley and arrived at its depths. There was a thick fog above their heads. It combined with the power of heaven and earth to form a powerful array formation that sealed the entire Flower Valley. The poison in the air was even more intense, causing their consciousness to fade and making it difficult for them to concentrate. The various flowers and plants on the ground had also become stronger. They had evolved and mutated so much that it was difficult to recognize them. The surroundings were quiet. It was as silent as death. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao held their swords and slowed down as they vigilantly observed their surroundings. Suddenly, rustling sounds came from the dense flowers in front of them. A sharp gust of wind blew. The 2 immediately stopped flying and looked ahead with sharp gazes. Soon, a dense crowd of figures emerged from the lush flowers and flew into the sky. Ji Tianxing immediately saw them clearly. They were more than 20 strange-looking demon beasts. Some of the demon beasts were humanoid. They had 4 limbs and a head, but their true forms were furry beasts. There were also some demon beasts that looked like ferocious beasts. Their bodies were filled with a strong, murderous aura, but their true forms were tree demons. The hair on their bodies was made of leaves and branches. There were also some demon beasts that were originally common birds and beasts that had evolved and mutated into ferocious and terrifying demon beasts. A total of 26 demon beasts stood in the sky and blocked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's path. Chapter 17:01. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao gripped their swords tightly as they stared coldly at the Fey beasts. The duo could tell that the Fey beasts were at least at the 8th firmament essence soul realm. The strongest Fey beasts had already reached the peak 9th firmament essence soul realm and were about to face a heavenly tribulation. Without a doubt, this pack of ferocious Fey beasts possessed terrifying combat strength. The duo had to be careful, or they might return in defeat. As Ji Tianxing observed the pack of Fey beasts, he sent a voice transmission to Yun Yao. Yao Yao, there's only one path to enter the depths of Centauria Valley. We have to charge our way in. When the battle begins, just hold the fort for me. Do not charge in. I suspect that there are far more Fey beasts entrenched in Centauria Valley. Yun Yao nodded and asked with a voice transmission, by the way, Tianxing, where's the little black dragon? How strong is it? Can it come out to help? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with a heavy expression, I obtained a divine dragon crystal in the ruins of gods and gave it to the little black dragon. It is currently refining the divine dragon crystal and has been in a deep slumber. It has yet to awaken. We can only rely on ourselves for this battle. Yin Yao nodded slightly as her eyes turned solemn. More than 20 Fey beasts stood in front of them, glaring at the duo. Their bodies emitted intense, killing intent. However, they were highly intelligent. It was as though they were carrying out orders and were not in a hurry to attack. Upon seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing frowned and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he thought of something. Could it be that this pack of Fey beasts are just shrimp soldiers and crab generals? Do they have a stronger leader? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a strong gust of wind came from deep within Centauria Valley. A rich floral fragrance wafted over. In a few short seconds, a gigantic figure flew out of the fog and arrived in the middle of the pack of Fey beasts. Ji Tianxing focused his gaze, and the first thing he saw was the azure WYRM that was covered in wounds. Its huge and sturdy body was originally covered with crisscrossing wounds and bloody holes, and its entire body was covered in blood. But now, the bloodstains all over its body had disappeared, and its wounds were gradually healing. Blood was no longer flowing out. It floated in midair, its flat head poking down and staring at Ji Tianxing. Its dark green eyes were filled with cold resentment. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao glanced at it, and their gazes fell on its back. On its broad back stood a huge figure that was 10 feet tall. It was a dark purple Yao Lord. It had the body of a human, but it had 4 muscular arms. Its body was very majestic. It was draped in a huge and tattered robe, and there were many rags hanging all over its body. Its head was like a strange purple flower, without a face or facial features. Without a doubt, it was a flower demon. On its left shoulder sat a petite banshee that looked like a human. The banshee was 2 meters tall, and her appearance was very similar to a human. She had a slim and healthy figure and a charming and beautiful face. She wore a light pink dress and had long dark green hair. She was barefooted and swayed her legs leisurely. After careful observation, Ji Tianxing discovered that this human-like woman was actually a flower demon. Moreover, there was a flower vine connecting her to the ugly flower demon. Her life force and dermic power aura were also connected. Both of their strengths had reached the 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing couldn't help but frown. He muttered softly, as the ancient saying goes, Flowers bloom on the same stem and branches are intertwined. Could it be that these two flower demons evolved from a single flower on a stem? Yin Yao nodded slightly and replied in a low voice, I think so. The flower on a stem is rare, and it's even rarer for both of them to evolve into flower demons. These two flower demons are very strong, and they must have powerful magical techniques. We have to be careful. As soon as she finished speaking, the charming flower demoness covered her mouth with her hand and giggled. Hee hee, I didn't expect that the two insects that came to die in the Flower Valley were a pair of beautiful people. For thousands of years, countless insects of the human race have entered the Flower Valley and become fertilizer for the flowers. It's the first time I've seen such a talented couple with outstanding talents like you. I'm really looking forward to grinding your bones and scattering your ashes. I'll mix it with your blood and sprinkle it in the Flower Valley. I wonder if it'll have a miraculous effect. The flower demon's voice was very sharp, and she was speaking the human language of the divine item continent. Ji Tianxing looked at her coldly and said with a murderous aura, Even if you have the appearance of a human and master the human language, you're still just a cruel flower demon. You're full of evil. Since you met us today, you'll die. Hearing his words, the flower demon suddenly raised her head and laughed. Haha, it's so funny. The number of insects of the human race that died under my claws is at least 800, if not 1,000. At least half of them would boast shamelessly like you before making a move, bluffing and bluffing. But in the end, when they were about to die under my claws, they would be terrified and desperate to the extreme. They would kneel and beg for mercy in all kinds of ugly ways. The human race is so sad. The ugly flower demon that carried her on its shoulder couldn't help but say something. It spoke with a middle-aged man's voice and said coldly, Ming Lan, why are you talking nonsense with these two insects? After saying that, it waved one of its thick and solid arms and ordered the 20 over demonic beasts. Kill those two worms for this monarch and tear them into pieces. The more than 20 demon beasts received the order and let out sharp roars. They rushed toward Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao as fast as lightning. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The demon beasts released colorful lights, which condensed into light blades that covered the sky. They covered Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. They divided the work and cooperated with each other very well. A few demon beasts stood in the outer circle and kept releasing demon beasts, poisonous fog, and venom. They attacked Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao fiercely. The demon beasts, who were good at close combat, rushed forward bravely and waved their sharp claws to attack. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were immediately surrounded. They were in danger. The ferocious cyan dragon carried the two twin flower demons on its back and stood in midair, admiring the fierce battle. Ji Tianxing was fearless. He waved the Burial of Heaven sword with all his strength and used his secret sword technique to resist the attacks of the demon beasts. Yin Yao also waved her sword and used her technique with a serious face. Her figure was like a graceful swan, flashing continuously in the air. Light blades and sword lights covered the sky and earth. All kinds of colorful magical lights collided fiercely. Boom, boom, boom. Loud noises kept echoing in the Flower Valley and didn't disappear for a long time. Chapter 1702. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao fought with more than 20 demon beasts for 100 seconds. Within a radius of dozens of miles, everything had turned into a desolate ruin. The flowers on the ground had been smashed into pieces by the aftermath of the battle. The fertile black and red ground was full of deep pits and gullies. Many demon beast bodies were scattered around. In the battle just now, 6 demon beasts had been killed. Their bodies had been smashed into pieces and mixed with blood on the ground. The cliffs on both sides of the valley had also been smashed into pieces and were full of cracks. Fortunately, the mountains on both sides were protected by a mysterious force. Otherwise, the two mountains would have collapsed and turned into ruins. Meteor fire shower. Ji Tianxing suddenly shouted. He waved his hands and performed a mysterious spell, releasing a terrifying secret technique. Endless flames quickly gathered in the sky above the Flower Valley and turned into an overwhelming fireball, pouring down like a rainstorm. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the area within a few dozen miles was turned into a sea of fire. The extremely violent Tiangang Crimson fire drowned more than 20 demon beasts. Even the evil green dragon hurriedly retreated a few dozen miles and escaped from the sea of fire. The 22 primordial soul realm demonic beasts struggled in the sea of fire as they let out shrill and painful cries. Almost all of the demon beasts were burned by the Tiangang Crimson fire. Their bodies were charred black and smoke billowed out. The 5 weaker demonic beasts had already suffered heavy injuries. Now that they were burned by the raging fire, they were burned into charcoal on the spot and scattered in the sea of fire. Even their essence souls were severely injured. They flew out of the sea of fire and fled into the depths of the Flower Valley. Ji Tianxing had been prepared. How could he let them escape so easily? Star-breaking fist. He swung his fists repeatedly, sending out a few dazzling golden fist auras towards the few primordial spirits. With a series of muffled bangs, the nascent divinities were immediately destroyed and shattered into pieces. Yin Yao also took advantage of the situation to display her ultimate skill. She waved her sword and released a destructive power. Starfall. In the sky above the Flower Valley, 12 bright silver lights immediately appeared like 12 dazzling stars. Every star was burning with silver sparks. They fell from the sky and hit several demonic beasts on the spot. Boom, boom, boom. A few deafening explosions erupted, causing the entire 100-Flower Valley to tremble violently. Several demonic beasts were killed on the spot. Their bodies turned into pieces of flesh and blood, and even their primordial spirits were blasted into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the number of demonic beasts decreased sharply, leaving only 11. Moreover, the 11 demonic beasts were still struggling in the sea of fire, and their injuries were getting worse and worse. Seeing this, the twin flower demons were enraged and let out furious roars. The flower demoness frowned and cursed with a cold expression. "Damned insects, I underestimated you." The ugly flower demon roared with murderous intent. "You destroyed my Flower Valley and killed my servant. You deserve to die." As it roared, the ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released green poison that covered the sky and earth, pouring it into the sea of fire. TSK, TSK, TSK. The terrifying green poison fell into the sea of fire and quickly extinguished the Big Dipper crimson fire. The ground within a 60-mile radius turned into a charred ruin, and thick smoke was still rising. The 11 wounded demonic beasts escaped from the charred ruins as if they had been pardoned and returned to the side of the evil green dragon. "Let me kill them myself." The ugly flower demon roared and rode the evil dragon towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. It raised its 4 arms that were 15 meters long and extended hundreds of dark green vines that were as thick as buckets. They stabbed straight at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao like spears. Each dark green vine was as hard as a tribulation-grade Dharma treasure, and its aura was extremely fierce. No matter if it was an iron wall or a Dharma treasure shield, it could not stop the vines from stabbing. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were surrounded by countless vines, and there was nowhere for them to escape. The 2 of them were about to be pierced into sieves. At the critical moment, Ji Tianxing shouted calmly and held Yun Yao in his arms. "Golden rock wings unite." The golden wings on his back immediately opened and covered him and Yun Yao, protecting them closely. Hundreds of dark green vines stabbed the golden wings like sharp swords, and a series of dull, loud noises were heard. Bang, 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 bang. The golden wings kept shaking and flashing with dazzling golden light, but they were not damaged at all. On the contrary, the dark green vines were knocked back and tangled together in a messy way. The ugly flower demon was startled for a moment before it hurriedly used a secret technique to release an endless amount of poisonous gas. Swish, swish, swish. Hundreds of vines spurted out dark green gas at the same time, enveloping Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The dark green poisonous gas had an extremely powerful corrosive power and could paralyze and destroy a warrior's essence soul. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao immediately felt dizzy, and their essence souls were tingling. What a powerful poison! If we weren't protected by the Kenshin battle robes, we would have been corroded by the poison immediately, and our essence souls would have been damaged. Ji Tianxing exclaimed in a low voice, and his eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. He flew 5 kilometers away with Yun Yao and escaped from the dark green, poisonous fog. He had just spread his golden wings and was about to counterattack with his sword. At this time, the flower demoness waved her slender arms, releasing an overwhelming amount of pink petals that poured down like raindrops. The tens of thousands of pink petals looked very beautiful. They were like dancing butterflies and also like pink snowflakes falling. However, Ji Tianxing's expression changed, and fear flashed in his eyes. He could clearly sense that each of the pink petals contained a power that could destroy the heavens and earth. In the next moment, the sky full of petals fell on top of his and Yun Yao's heads and immediately exploded. Boom, boom, boom. An earth-shattering explosion sounded in the air, shaking the entire 100-flower valley. Every single pink petal was glowing with a blinding dark red light, exuding a power that could destroy everything in its path. The ground within a radius of 100 miles was instantly blasted into a deep crater. Endless amounts of soil flew up into the sky, turning into fine powder and drifting down. The ground within 100 miles was shaved off by dozens of feet, and the entire flower valley shook violently. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing sensed the danger in advance and used the divine concealment step to escape dozens of miles away with Yun Yao. Moreover, he used the golden rock wings to protect himself and Yun Yao at the critical moment. The destructive shockwave blasted him and Yun Yao more than 15 miles away and smashed into the ruins. 100 feet deep pit was formed on the ground, and the two of them were buried underground by dust. After a while, the two of them struggled to fly out of the deep pit, shook off the soil on their bodies, and flew back into the sky. Chapter 17:03. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were both heavily injured. Their dermic powers were in a mess, and they were panting heavily. Fortunately, they had the Kenshin battle robes, which helped them block most of the power. If not for that, they would have been blasted into pieces by the terrifying petal shower. Such a dangerous encounter made them realize that the twin flower demons were very powerful and difficult to deal with. The two of them quickly adjusted their breathing and suppressed their internal injuries. After a while, the dust that covered the sky gradually dissipated. The loud noise that reverberated in the sky also gradually stopped. Seeing Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao standing in the sky unscathed, the female flower demon frowned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? They are only in the essence soul realm. How can they not die? The female flower demon's eyes were filled with a cold light. Her body was filled with anger and murderous intent. The ugly flower demon was silent for a while. Then it said in a low voice, "They must have powerful Dharma treasures. They must also have extraordinary skills. Such talented human cultivators are really rare. It's a pity to use them as fertilizer for the flowers." The female flower demon immediately understood what it meant. She licked her lips with bloodthirsty eyes and said with a cold smile, "That's right. If we could devour their flesh and essence souls, we will definitely reap great benefits." At this moment, the 11 surviving demon bees saw that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were injured. They pounced on them without any regard for their own safety. They spread out and formed a battle line. They joined forces to release dermic powers that covered the sky and earth. Colorful dermic powers fell from the sky towards Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao with destructive power. The sky within a 50-kilometer radius was lit up again. The air was filled with violent power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao hurriedly waved their swords. Their faces were cold as they used their secret techniques to counterattack. Boom! 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 Dazzling sword gleams and dermic powers clashed fiercely in the sky. There was a deafening sound, and shockwaves were created. Colorful shockwaves spread out like ripples, fiercely attacking the surroundings. The ground, which had long been in ruins, was continuously shaved off layer after layer by the shockwave, filling the air with smoke and dust. The mountain ranges on both sides of the Flower Valley were also shattered by the impact. Cracks constantly appeared, and countless pieces of soil and gravel collapsed. The battle between the two sides caused the Flower Valley to be constantly destroyed, turning it into a tragic sight. However, the battle between Ji Tianxing, Yun Yao, and the 11 demon beasts only lasted for 100 breaths. Those demon beasts were already severely injured, and only had strength at the 8th or 9th tier of the Essence Soul Realm. How could they withstand the attacks of Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao? The husband and wife joined forces to unleash a secret technique, and actually killed the 11 demonic beasts one by one. All of them were chopped into pieces. Even the primordial spirits of those demonic beasts could not escape the fate of being destroyed. After 100 breaths, the battle stopped. Pieces of flesh and blood were scattered all over the ruins in a radius of 100 miles. They were all severed limbs of the demonic beasts. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were both bathed in blood. Their hair was disheveled as they stood above the ruins. The two of them had exhausted too much of their dermic powers. They had no choice but to take out pills and consume them to silently recover their dermic powers. In the sky in front of them, the evil green dragon carried the twin flower demons and flew over at a moderate speed. It stopped 1,000 feet away from the two of them. The two sides faced each other above the ruins that were filled with smoke and dust. Both of them were filled with murderous intent, and their postures were unyielding. The evil flower demon stood on the back of the evil dragon, while the female flower demon stood on its shoulder. They looked down at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. The female flower demon stared at the two of them coldly. She said in a serious tone, "I have to admit that your strength and methods have indeed surprised me. I can't remember how many years it has been since I last met such monstrous warriors like you. Actually, I admire genius warriors like you very much. Therefore, I will give you one last chance. Kneel down and admit defeat. If you submit to me, I will spare your lives." The evil flower demon also said in a powerful voice, "If you are loyal enough and perform well, I will teach you the secret of immortality and appoint you to lead the entire illusory mountain range." Its voice was filled with a powerful, soul-sucking power. It contained the power to suck one's soul. If a warrior's mind was weak and did not have enough willpower, they would be bewitched by its voice. Their willpower would also waver. However, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were not ordinary people. The two of them had strong willpower. They did not take the twin flower demon's words to heart at all. Ji Tianxing secretly transmitted his voice to Yun Yao and asked, "Yao Yao, the flower demon mentioned the secret of immortality. It is probably referring to the divine pearl hidden in the Flower Valley." "Yes." Yun Yao nodded and said in a serious tone, "According to the situation in the 100 Flower Valley, that divine pearl is very likely the divine pearl of immortality. I can sense that the divine pearl is not on the twin flower demons. It is still in the depths of the 100 Flower Valley." A murderous intent flashed in Ji Tianxing's eyes. He said in a low voice, "It seems that we have to get rid of the twin flower demons to find that divine pearl." Just as the two of them were discussing through voice transmissions, the female flower demon saw that the two of them did not respond. She was enraged and urged, "Bastards, did you hear what I said? My patience is limited. I will only give you 10 seconds to consider. After 10 seconds, if you do not submit, only death awaits you." When she finished speaking, Ji Tianxing raised his head and looked at her coldly. His lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "You are just a flower demon. How dare you be so arrogant? What a joke. Why do you need 10 seconds? Let me tell you now. You want us to submit? You are not worthy. The ones who will die are you." As he spoke, a golden light surged from Ji Tianxing's body and a murderous aura that shook the heavens. A giant golden sword that was thousands of feet tall appeared behind him and flew into the sky. The majestic and dazzling sword flickered with golden light and exuded a sacred aura. "White Tiger's sacred sword. Ji Tianxing roared with murderous intent. He controlled the 1,000-feet-tall golden sword and slashed it at the twin flower demons. The golden light from the giant sword condensed into the image of a white tiger that was as large as a mountain. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws. This sword was like a golden rainbow that split the sky. It could split the heavens and earth. Its power was so terrifying that the twin flower demons' expressions changed. The giant sword locked onto the evil green dragon's aura. Its eyes were filled with fear. However, it was carrying the twin flower demons and did not dare to act on its own. It could only brace itself and face the attack. The twin flower demons worked together to cast a spell. They released vines and 5-colored lights that covered the sky and earth to meet the white tiger sacred sword. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, a deafening explosion resounded through the clouds. The dazzling golden light and 5-colored lights instantly collapsed and spread in all directions, covering a radius of hundreds of miles. The giant white tiger image also enveloped the twin flower demons and the evil green dragon. A violent shockwave spread out in all directions, creating a monstrous hurricane. Chapter 1704. The loud noise shook the heavens, and the earth trembled violently. The entire flower valley shook, and the mountains on both sides collapsed, collapsing countless boulders and soil. The power of the white tiger's sacred sword was terrifying. Everything within a few hundred miles was shaken and almost turned into ruins. The twin flower demons' counterattack was shattered by the giant sword, and they collapsed on the spot. They were also hit by the giant sword, and they screamed as they flew backward, crashing 20 miles away. Just as they were about to crash into the ground, the ugly flower demons extended hundreds of vines and stabbed them into the ground, finally stabilizing their bodies. With their tribulation transcendence realm strength, they quickly offset the power of the white tiger's sacred sword and only suffered minor injuries. However, the evil green dragon was unlucky. It did not have time to dodge, and it was not as powerful as the twin flower demons. It was hit by the white tiger's sacred sword on the spot. The 1,000-feet-tall, primordial soul golden sword cut it in half. The cut was very smooth, and dark red blood spurted out like a fountain. The extreme pain made it try its best to open its flat mouth and let out a sharp and ear-piercing hiss. The two halves of the body fell into the ruins, twisting and bouncing madly. Its vitality was incomparably tenacious. Even if its body was cut in half, its body could still survive. Swoosh! The severed tail flew toward the front half of its body, trying to reattach it. However, Ji Tianxing controlled the primordial soul golden sword and slashed with all his strength. Bam! With a deafening muffled sound, the primordial soul golden sword slashed the evil dragon's head. Its flat head was split open by the giant's sword on the spot, and blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. A dark green eyeball was mixed in with it. With this sword, the evil dragon was killed on the spot. It could not be more dead. Not only was its body destroyed, but even its primordial soul did not have time to escape and was instantly killed by the golden sword. After the broken corpse twitched a few times, it fell powerlessly into the ruins. The flying soil quickly buried its body. The evil dragon, which was at the first stage of the tribulation transcendence realm, was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that. The twin flower demons witnessed the entire process with their own eyes. They were stunned, unable to believe what they were seeing. When they came back to their senses, they became even more furious and irritable. Monstrous killing intent surged out from their bodies and condensed into blood-red flames around them. Damned reptile, I'll tear you to shreds. Die. Only by torturing and killing all of you 10 times can this monarch's hatred be dispelled. The twin flower demons roared with murderous intent. They immediately charged over and used their secret techniques to attack Ji, Tianxing, and Yunyao. Heart-slaying evil spear. Flying flower remnant dream. The ugly flower demon waved its 4 arms and released thousands of dark green vines, which transformed into thousands of javelins that were over 100 feet long. They rained down on Ji Tianxing and his companion. Every spear formed from vines was comparable to a low-grade tribulation-level magical treasure. They could pierce through all obstacles and unleash destructive power. Thousands of sharp spears stab at the same time, sealing off the area within a radius of 10 miles. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had nowhere to run. The female flower demon waved her slender arms and palms, scattering colorful petals that blotted out the sky and earth. The seemingly weak and colorful petals were highly toxic and could unleash destructive power. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already seen the power of the petal shower, so they naturally didn't dare to be careless. Seeing the rain of spears coming at them, the couple's expressions turned serious. Intense fear flashed across their eyes. Ji Tianxing was about to spread his golden wings to protect himself and Yun Yao. However, Yun Yao was faster than him. She hurriedly took out a palm-sized ice crystal statue and raised it above her head. This ice crystal statue was a lifelike woman in a blue dress. That woman's face was beautiful and graceful. Her aura was mysterious and holy. Without a doubt, this was the statue of the Luo Shui martial god. Boundless dermic powers surged out of Yun Yao's palm and entered the statue of the Luo Shui martial god. Immediately, the ice crystal statue emitted a dazzling icy blue light, forming a light screen that was 100 feet in radius. The icy blue light screen immediately enveloped Yun Yao and Ji Tianxing, protecting them tightly. In the next moment, the overwhelming spears and the rain of flowers struck the icy blue light screen at the same time. Boom! 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 Amidst the earth-shattering sounds, the dark green wrought-tan spears and colorful petals exploded, unleashing destructive power. The icy blue light screen trembled violently from the explosion, creating layers of ripples. However, Yun Yao stood upright. Her hand holding the ice crystal statue did not move at all. Her expression was firm. The icy blue light screen was also undamaged. Not a single crack appeared. It was peaceful inside the light screen. It was not affected at all. Outside the light screen, however, was another scene. It was like another world. The destructive power of the explosion blasted the ruins and the mountain ranges on both sides of the Flower Valley into huge craters that were thousands of feet deep. Within 200 miles, there was not a single mountain range or mound. Not even a stone the size of a water tank could be found. Whether it was the towering mountain range or the millstone, they were all blasted into powder. Such a peerlessly terrifying power was truly capable of destroying everything. After a long time, the smoke and dust in the sky dissipated. The area within 200 miles had completely turned into a 1,000-foot deep crater. It was impossible to distinguish the valley from the flat ground. Half of the Flower Valley was destroyed just like that. Only then did Yun Yao put away the ice crystal statue and remove the icy blue light screen. Ji Tianxing glanced at the ice crystal statue and asked telepathically, "Yao Yao, what treasure is this?" Yun Yao hurriedly replied, "It's a protective treasure that Granny Long gave me, the Luotian spirit. It can only be used 3 times, and the statue will shatter." Ji Tianxing nodded to show that he understood. Then he and Yun Yao flew across the sky side by side and headed straight for the twin flower demons. The twin flower demons were 20 miles away in the sky. They were looking around with pity. The Flower Valley was their home. Now that 1/3 of it had been destroyed, how could they not be heartbroken? The most hateful thing was that even though they had sacrificed so much, they were unable to hurt Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Seeing that the 2 of them were unharmed, the twin flower demons were furious and shocked. They turned around and fled into the depths of the Flower Valley without hesitation. Damn bastards. They really do have powerful protective treasures. We can't fight them head-on. Let's avoid them for now. The 2 secret techniques just now were the twin flower demons' most powerful techniques. If Yun Yao did not use the Divine Master statue, she and Ji Tianxing would have been killed. The twin flower demons knew that even if they continued fighting, they would not be able to gain the upper hand. Since that was the case, they could only escape into the depths of the flower valley and think of another way. Swoosh! The twin flower demons turned into a dark green stream of light and streaked across the sky, heading straight for the depths of the flower valley. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao also flew across the sky and chased after them. Chapter 17:05. In the depths of the 100-Flower Valley. The ground of the 100-mile-wide valley was covered in lush flowers and plants. Almost every flower and plant was an evolved version of ordinary spirit herbs. They grew extremely strong and demonic. The air was filled with the pungent smell of pollen, which contained a strong poison. In addition, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could sense that the world was filled with strong divine power fluctuations. Yun Yao used her mind to sense, and could clearly sense that the divine pearl's aura was nearby. The husband and wife stood in the sky, holding swords in their hands as they looked coldly ahead. 5 kilometers ahead was the end of the flower valley. At the end of the valley was a 2-kilometer-tall mountain. The mountain walls below the mountainside were covered in moss, vines, and green weeds. There was a huge cave at the foot of the mountain. A circle of purple-red poisonous flowers climbed up the cave entrance. The twin flower demons stood outside the cave, facing off against Ji Tianxing and his wife. Without a doubt, that ancient cave was the twin flower demon's lair. Damned insects, how dare you chase us here? You're courting death. The twin flower demons stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao with venomous eyes and sneered mockingly. We've occupied this flower valley for 2,000 years. During this time, who knows how many warriors have entered this place, but they were all killed by us. Haven't you ever thought about why we're invincible? At this moment, the twin flower demons no longer had a trace of worry or fear. Her expression and tone were filled with absolute confidence and a strong sense of success. Yin Yao glanced at her and turned to look around. She said calmly, "You're relying on nothing more than the divine item hidden in the flower valley. Since we dare to enter this place, we have enough confidence to kill you and take the divine item. I don't know what you're so proud of." Hearing this, the twin flower demon's smile instantly froze. Her expression and eyes slowly turned cold. She frowned fiercely. Her eyes were filled with strong, killing intent as she sneered again. "Ha ha ha. No wonder you guys pressed on step by step and rushed here without a care for anything. It turns out that you guys have long coveted this monarch's treasure. Since that's the case, then all the more you deserve to die. You only know that there are divine items in the depths of Flower Valley, but you don't know that this is not a treasure trove or a holy land, but a purgatory of death." As soon as she finished speaking, Ji Tianxing frowned and said coldly, "You talk too much nonsense." As he spoke, he once again summoned his primordial spirit golden sword, and his entire body radiated a golden light that soared into the sky. In addition, the sword of burial of heaven also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 3,000 meters, transforming into a towering pitch-black sword. In the next moment, Ji Tianxing turned into a golden light and merged with the golden sword. Immediately after, the burial of heaven fused with the essence soul golden sword, causing the golden sword's power to increase by several times. The golden sword of the soul had also turned dark gold, mixed with wisps of mysterious black light. Heaven's splitting sword. The giant sword descended from the sky and slashed towards the twin flower demons with an unparalleled divine power. Before the sword radiance arrived, the terrifying suppressive force had already suppressed the twin flower demons, making it difficult for them to move and slowing them down by more than 2 times. The twin flower demon's divine soul aura was also locked down. This sword had nowhere to run, and there was no way for them to avoid it. Damn it! The twin flower demon's expression changed drastically, and they let out a furious scream. The ugly flower demon did not have time to use its trump card, so it could only use its ultimate technique with all its might to block the attack of the giant sword of the soul. At the critical moment, It waved its 4 arms wildly, releasing thousands of green vines that wrapped around the giant sword of the soul. The flower demoness unleashed all of her power, releasing a multicolored radiance that formed a gigantic barrier of light, blocking the sky above her head. Bang! 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 At the same time, the destructive giant sword of the soul slashed down fiercely, hitting countless vines and the colorful light shield. Those flexible vines were impervious to water and fire, and could withstand the attack of a tribulation-level Dharma treasure. However, they couldn't withstand the power of the sword. At least 500 vines were severed on the spot by the giant sword of the soul. They turned into pieces and flew out. Immediately after, the giant sword of the soul shattered the colorful light shield and slashed the twin flower demons. Boom! Crack! Amidst a deafening sound, the twin flower demons were slashed into the ground by the giant sword. A 15-kilometer-long ravine was formed on the ground that was covered in flowers. It was like a natural chasm. The entire flower valley trembled violently and shook crazily. The violent shock wave swept to both sides like a huge wave, crushing countless flowers and plants. The mountain ranges on both sides of the flower valley were also torn apart by the impact and collapsed with a rumble. The golden light and dust that blotted out the sky lasted for a long time before dissipating. 10 breaths later, Ji Tianxing returned to Yun Yao's side. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his hand, and the 10,000 feet tall essence soul golden sword floated in the sky behind him. In front of him in Yun Yao, the ground had already turned into ruins. It was covered in cracks and fragments of flowers and plants. A series of rustling sounds came from the wide and deep ravine. A moment later, the twin flower demons flew out of the ravine and returned to the sky. Although the twin flower demons were powerful and successfully blocked the sword and were not killed, they were in a miserable state. However, their appearances were extremely miserable. They were already heavily injured. The ugly flower demon's body had been split into 2. It had lost 2 arms and half of its body. There was no bleeding from its wounds, but dark green liquid kept flowing out. It dripped onto the ground and corroded the soil into ashes. Half of the female flower demon's head had been chopped off, and her left arm had disappeared. Green liquid kept gushing out of the wound. Dense green sprouts and branches also appeared. It looked rather strange. They secretly used a mystic technique to absorb some kind of energy and were healing their injuries. Those hideous and terrifying wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and new bodies were quickly growing out. The flower demoness glared at Ji Tianxing with venomous eyes. Her voice was hoarse as she growled, "You damned reptile! I will let you have your soul devoured by 10,000 poisons and die in extreme pain." As she roared, the female flower demon waved her arms as fast as lightning and formed several array seals. 10,000 poisons, soul-devouring array. The ugly flower demons also joined forces to cast a spell. They waved their arms and released an earth-shattering radiance of Dharma power. Suddenly, all the flowers and plant fragments within a 100-mile radius silently melted into 5-colored air currents and gathered in the sky. In a short while, the entire flower valley turned into a grayish-brown desert. There was no green or color at all. The endless 5-colored air currents condensed into a thick sky curtain that covered the entire 100-mile radius. This area had been sealed. After the formation was formed, it gathered a powerful force of heaven and earth and fiercely suppressed Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. The poisonous gas in the air suddenly became dozens of times stronger. There were also many types of poisons. Chapter 1706. Even though Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had special physiques and were immune to all poisons, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had the talent of being immune to poison. However, the formation cast by the twin flower demons contained the poisonous power of tens of thousands of poisonous flowers and herbs. Its power was extremely terrifying. If it were an ordinary essence soul realm cultivator, they would have been corroded by the poison on the spot and turned into a pool of blood. The two of them were only corroded by the poison, and their internal organs were slightly injured. It was already a very rare thing. Moreover, Ji Tianxing took out a pale golden pill from his interspatial ring and handed it to Yun Yao. After Yun Yao took the pill, the effects of the pill quickly suppressed the poison in her body. Ji Tianxing secretly activated the power of the heaven-mending pearl and used the sacred white light to quickly remove the poison. In the blink of an eye, the two of them returned to normal. Black blood no longer flowed out of their mouths and noses. The two of them joined forces to cast spells and used all their strength to resist the suppression. The twin flower demons were shocked when they saw this scene. They only felt disbelief. How is this possible? My soul-devouring poison is actually ineffective against them? Even a Tribulation Transcendence Realm cultivator would be severely injured after being corroded by the soul-devouring poison, let alone an Essence Soul Realm cultivator. These two human worms can actually resist the power of the soul-devouring poison and the suppression of the formation. It's simply unbelievable. The two flower demons were shocked. Their hearts were filled with horror and anger. They desperately released their dermic powers and fully activated the power of the formation to suppress Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. Suddenly, the power of the soul-devouring poison that filled the world more than doubled. The poison was originally invisible, but now it appeared as colorful air currents that intertwined and flowed in the sky. Over 10,000 types of highly toxic poisons were gathered together, emitting an incomparably fishy and pungent smell that caused one's head to swell and caused one's divine sense to become blurry and chaotic. The suppression power of the formation also increased by about 2 times. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's faces became as pale as paper again. Cold sweat broke out all over their bodies, and their bodies became much more bent. However, the two of them used their secret techniques and tenaciously held on. As for the 5-color poison between heaven and earth, the two of them relied on the effects of the heaven-mending beads and medicinal pills to keep the poison out of their bodies. A full 100 breaths of time passed. Their complexions became even paler. Their bodies were drenched in sweat, and their waists were bent over in pain. Other than that, neither of them were injured, nor did they fall. This result made the twin flower demons even more shocked and furious. The flower demoness's dark purple pupils flashed with fury and killing intent. She said in a low voice, "Underworld tree, we can't go on like this. The strength of those two insects is far beyond our imagination. I'm afraid they will be able to hold on for a long time. We haven't met such a difficult opponent in over 500 years. The flower valley that we have painstakingly built has been destroyed in a day. If we don't execute those two worms and use the cruelest method to kill them, how can we vent our hatred?" The ugly flower demon twisted its body and growled murderously. "If that's the case, we can only use that trump card. I don't believe that after using those 2 trump cards, I won't be able to kill those 2 worms." The flower demoness licked her lips and nodded. "All right, we'll do it the same way." Then, she waved her slender arms. Purple light shot into the sky from her body and turned into a blood-colored figure that was hundreds of meters tall. She, who was originally small, had turned into a huge and tall blood-colored giant. Her figure was hazy and blurry, and her appearance was hideous and terrifying. She was like a demon that had walked out of hell. She chanted an ancient and mysterious incantation and waved her 6 arms to form profound and mysterious seals. Suddenly, purple-red blood energy rushed out from the depths of the flower valley and madly gathered on her body. Her hundreds of meters tall blood-colored body became even more solid and thick and gave off a powerful, oppressive aura. She stared at Yun Yao with a pair of large eyes that were shrouded in blood flames. She waved her enormous palms and sent out blood-colored palms that covered the sky. The ugly flower demon's enormous body also gave off a green light that covered the sky. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a dark green tree demon that was hundreds of meters tall. It had 2 enormous legs that were covered in roots. Its arms also turned into tens of thousands of green vines that looked like tens of thousands of tentacles. After it used its secret technique, a green light shot into the sky from the depths of the flower valley. A huge green pearl slowly flew out. That pearl was as big as a wash basin. After it broke out of the ground, it flew into the sky and quickly merged with the tree demon's body. Suddenly, its strength increased by more than 5 times. It became extremely powerful and sacred. It opened its enormous mouth and let out an angry roar. It waved its tens of thousands of vines and sent out thousands of threads of green light. Tens of thousands of rays of green light, like a rain of light blades and arrows, enveloped Ji Tianxing. When Yunyao saw the green pearl, her body immediately shook, and her eyes surged with a strong sense of surprise and anticipation. She could clearly feel that it was the green pearl that had been calling out to her. However, the giant tree demon had swallowed the green pearl. Without waiting for her to react, the blood-red palm shadows that blotted out the sky and covered the earth came straight at her. At this critical moment, Ji Tianxing, who was not far away, shouted in a low voice, "Yao Yao, you deal with the tree demon. I'll deal with that flower demon." Obviously, this was the best choice. The hundreds of blood-red palm shadows that the flower demon had sent out contained a surging and strange demonic power. Ji Tianxing just happened to be able to counter it. Meanwhile, the rain of green light arrows released by the giant tree demon was closely related to Yunyao. She could also deal with it. Yunyao's mind was connected with his, so she immediately understood what he meant. Swoosh! Yunyao ignored the blood-red palm shadows that filled the sky. She waved her sword toward the rain of green light arrows and used a secret technique to block it. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb. He waved his hand and sent out a holy white light toward the dozens of blood-red palm shadows. Bam, 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 bam. In the next moment, a series of muffled sounds exploded in the flower valley. After the dozens of blood-red palm shadows were enveloped by the holy white light, they immediately melted like snow under the hot sun. Yunyao also used a secret technique to destroy the rain of green light arrows. She quickly swallowed the green light fragments. The trump card of the 2 flower demons was easily neutralized just like that. The 2 of them were stunned on the spot. They stared at Ji Tianxing and Yunyao dumbfounded. Their bodies seemed to have turned to stone. How is this possible? That's our most powerful trump card. Our most sacred divine item. How'd they block it? Even though they saw it with their own eyes, the 2 flower demons could not believe this scene. They could not accept this result. The blood-red light that surged out of the ground and the green pearl were the divine items that created the flower valley. They were also the source of power that gave birth to the twin flower demons. They treated these 2 treasures like gods and treated them as their strongest trump cards. However, even after using their most powerful trump cards, they still could not defeat Ji Tianxing and Yunyao. Chapter 1707. The 2 flower demons fell into a daze for a few breaths. Ji Tianxing didn't stop. After defeating the bloody palm, he immediately counterattacked. Vermilion bird, sacred sword. His body turned into a blazing fire, and a 1,000-meter-tall essence soul sword appeared behind him. The burial of heaven's sword also flew into the sky and instantly expanded to a height of 10,000 feet. It was as sacred and majestic as a giant pillar supporting the sky. The 3 instantly merged into a 1,000-meter-long giant sword surrounded by crimson fire. Whoosh! The giant sword unleashed an unparalleled power. Wrapped in a mountain-sized vermilion bird phantom, it slashed down from the sky toward Minglan. At that moment, the area within hundreds of miles was illuminated by fire. Half the sky turned crimson. The terrifying heat scorched the ground and the mountains into black, scorched earth. When the giant sword was above her head, Minglan suddenly came to her senses. But before she could dodge, the vermilion bird's sacred sword struck her head. Bam! With a deafening sound, Minglan's 1,000-meter-tall body was shattered into pieces by the giant sword. She collapsed into a bloody mist that blotted out the sky. Thousands of wisps of bloody mist spread out and mixed with the blazing crimson fire. It was difficult to distinguish them. The vermilion bird, sacred sword, struck the ground, creating a 50-mile-long trench in the ground. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. Half of the Flower Valley was destroyed on the spot, turning into black, scorched earth ruins. The mountains and hills on both sides of the Flower Valley were also flattened. The entire Flower Valley was destroyed, turning into a giant crater. The dense scarlet mist quickly gathered together, trying to reform a body. But Ji Tianxing was prepared. The vermilion bird's sacred sword quickly separated, and his figure appeared. You're related to the demon race, and even used their secret arts. Damn it! His eyes were cold as he shouted angrily. He waved his palms and sent out a white light toward the bloody mist. Whoosh! The sacred white light enveloped an area of dozens of miles, enveloping the thousands of wisps of bloody mist. The evil bloody mist quickly dissipated when it met the sacred white light and was purified into nothingness. In just a few breaths of time, the blood mist that filled the sky was completely wiped out and purified. The female flower demon Minglan was killed by Ji Tianxing just like that, not leaving behind a trace. The tree demon, the underworld tree, escaped from this area in a sorry state. It pierced through the white light and flew out 30 miles. It witnessed Minglan's death with its own eyes, and it was so angry that its eyes almost popped out of their sockets. It let out a furious howl. Reptile, you actually killed this monarch's wife. This monarch will grind your bones to dust. Unparalleled anger caused the underworld tree to descend into madness. Its 300-meter-tall tree demon body trembled violently as it crazily twisted its tens of thousands of vines, stabbing towards Ji Tianxing without any regard for the consequences. Supported by the power of the cyan light pearl, each of those vines extended for tens of miles, looking like a sharp spear that was about to pierce Ji Tianxing into a sieve. However, before the green glowing vines could reach them, Yun Yao charged forward with her sword. Demons and monsters quickly disperse. Heavenly water, thousand swords art. She waved her sword, and her sleeves fluttered as sword light filled the sky. She released 9,999 rays of icy blue sword light that pierced forward like a flood. Bam, bam, bam. The icy blue sword light collided with the green glowing vines, causing a series of earth-shattering explosions that shook the earth for hundreds of miles. Without a doubt, all of the icy blue sword light was destroyed, turning into ice fragments that scattered among the ruins. The green glowing vine's power was also greatly reduced. When they reached Yun Yao, they were blocked by an icy blue light screen. Yun Yao gripped the ice crystal statue with a serious expression and injected vast amounts of magic power into it, activating a light screen that was hundreds of meters wide. The endless green glowing vine stabbed into the light screen, causing muffled bam, bam, bam sounds. The light screen trembled violently and rippled, but it was still unbreakable. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianxing used the spirit concealment step and charged to the side of the underworld tree. The underworld tree sensed that something was wrong and immediately wanted to retract its vines. At the same time, a dark green light surged out of its body, forming a huge shield to protect itself. Unfortunately, it was all too late. Ji Tianxing stared at it fiercely. He suddenly raised his left hand and let out a murderous roar. God-slaying spear. Vast golden flames surged out of his left palm, forming a golden spear that was hundreds of meters long. He stabbed it at the underworld tree. Pop! With the sound of a bubble bursting, the dark green shield protecting the underworld tree was instantly pierced by the golden spear and shattered into pieces. Then, the invincible golden spear stabbed into the underworld tree's head and exploded with a boom. A dazzling golden mushroom cloud rose into the air. The dazzling golden light illuminated half of the Flower Valley, and even the sky was illuminated in a dazzling light. The underworld tree's 100-meter-tall body was blasted into tens of thousands of pieces and scattered in all directions. A dark green pearl was also tossed into the sky among the countless fragments of the branches. Yin Yao was already ready. She immediately flew over and shot out a ray of icy blue light, grabbing the dark green pearl in her hand. At the same time, a dark green primordial soul escaped in a panic. It turned around and fled into the distance. Ji Tianxing immediately chased after it. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed with all his might. Sky-splitting sword. The sword of burial of heaven released a giant golden sword that was hundreds of meters long. It was surrounded by dazzling purple lightning and slashed at the primordial soul of the underworld tree. The underworld tree's original form was a tree demon. It belonged to the wood element and was most afraid of lightning and fire. The underworld orchid was a demonic flower that grew on the underworld tree. It was also afraid of lightning and fire. It was all thanks to the power of the dark green pearl that the two of them could successfully pass through 4 lightning tribulations. Otherwise, they would have been turned into ashes by the lightning tribulations. At this moment, the underworld tree had lost its most precious dark green pearl. Its body was also destroyed, and its power was greatly reduced. When the golden lightning sword slashed at it, it was extremely frightened and panicked. It sped up and fled desperately. Unfortunately, no matter how fast it was, it could not be faster than Ji Tianxing's sword. Bam! With a muffled explosion, the underworld tree's primordial soul was hit by the golden sword and was surrounded by thousands of lightning arcs. Crackling sounds of thunder could be heard. Its primordial soul was torn apart by the lightning and shattered into several pieces. However, its vitality was abnormally strong. It did not die even after its primordial soul was shattered. A few pieces of its primordial soul even gathered together and wanted to reform. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing thought to himself, as expected of the longevity divine pearl. It actually contains such terrifying vitality. The underworld tree has occupied the divine pearl for countless years. Under the baptism of the divine pearl's power, it still has such tenacious vitality. I hope that after Yao Yao refines this longevity divine pearl, she can extend her life and greatly increase her lifespan. Chapter 1708. Hundreds of fingernail-sized, primordial spirit fragments fell from the sky. The 4th level tribulation transcendence realm tree demon was killed just like that. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and shot out a golden light, collecting all the fragments in the sky. A black hole appeared in his right palm and immediately swallowed all the primordial spirit fragments. Since entering the Phantom Mountain Range, we have killed hundreds of demonic beasts. Only these 2 twin flower demons are the strongest. After the burial of heaven devours their primordial spirit fragments, it should be able to recover a lot of primordial spirit, right? With that thought in mind, he turned and flew toward Yin Yao. Yin Yao was standing in the sky, holding the basin-sized dark cyan pearl with both hands and looking at it with a gratified expression. The round pearl was sparkling and translucent, flickering with a bright cyan light. It was breathing rhythmically as if it had a life of its own. The pearl emitted a majestic aura of life. It was enough to change the world and turn the endless desert into a forest. Ji Tianxing only took a few breaths of the aura of life and felt that his lifespan had increased by a few years. This is the longevity divine pearl, one of the 7-soul divine pearls, one incredible divine object. Whoever has this divine pearl will definitely be immortal. Yin Yao looked up at him and shook her head gently. This is indeed the longevity divine pearl. It is very compatible with my soul and has a close connection. After I fuse with this divine pearl, I will have the 3 souls. I think my lifespan will be extended by many years. However, it is unrealistic to use this divine pearl to achieve immortality. Even a martial god who has just entered the divine Tao can escape the 10,000-year lifespan limit. If one could gain immortality by obtaining this divine pearl, countless martial gods would fight over it like crazy. This divine pearl won't be here, and it will be impossible for us to obtain it. Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and felt that it made sense. He nodded and said, "That's true. Although the divine pearl is magical, it can't change one's fate. It can't help one break through the 10,000-year limit." Yin Yao kept the dark cyan pearl and said with a gratified expression, "Tianqing, we've got the longevity divine pearl. Our trip is considered a success. Let's go. Let's return to the Luotian mountain first. I'll slowly refine it." Ji Tianqing nodded and flew out of Flower Valley with her side by side. The two of them flew over the scorched earth and ruins. They saw that the Flower Valley, which was 100 miles wide and 500 miles long, was completely destroyed. A moment later, the two of them were halfway through their flight. At this moment, the entire Flower Valley ruins shook violently as if a super earthquake had occurred. A series of muffled, rumbling noises came from the depths of the ground. The ground continued to crack, and huge pits were formed. Countless amounts of soil surged upwards, and black ash and smoke covered the sky. Blood-red flames surged out from the ground, drowning the entire Flower Valley. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao hurriedly flew up into the sky, away from the blood-colored sea of fire. "What's going on? The twin flower demons are already dead. Why is there a sudden change in Flower Valley?" Yin Yao frowned in confusion. Ji Tianqing frowned and observed for a moment. He said in a low voice, "Since this Flower Valley was created by the longevity divine pearl, it's also an evil place full of devil chi. Now that the twin flower demons are dead, the formation protecting Flower Valley has collapsed. Of course, this area will be destroyed. This is good too. If this evil and filthy place is destroyed, there won't be any future troubles." Just as he finished speaking, a series of cracking noises came from the depths of the raging sea of fire. That kind of sound was like the sound of a pile of broken bones rubbing against each other. It made one's hair stand on end. Ji Tianqing's expression changed instantly. A thick murderous aura flashed across his eyes. What a powerful devil chi. Oh no, there's probably a giant demon hiding in the depths of Flower Valley. It's going to wake up now. As he said that, he pulled Yin Yao and flew high into the sky. They flew out as fast as lightning. However, endless white bones and skeletons surged out of the surging bloody sea of fire. They surged like a tide and chased out of the Flower Valley. Tens of thousands of white bones and skeletons surged and flowed rapidly. They were about to condense into a giant demon. When Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao flew to the entrance of Flower Valley, the tide of white bones had also condensed into a white bone giant demon that was hundreds of feet tall. It was as big as a mountain. Not only did this white bone giant demon have a huge body, but also had strong arms and legs. It also had two huge skulls. Upon closer inspection, its head was formed by tens of thousands of human skulls. Its body was also formed by countless human skeletons. Its entire body was surrounded by a crimson red light. It rose like a raging flame. It exuded an extremely bloody and evil aura. On its two heads, there were two pairs of deeply sunken eye sockets, for balls of bloody fire were jumping in them. Those were its eyes. They contained a powerful demonic power. Crack, crack, crack. The white-bone giant demon opened and closed its big mouth. It let out an ear-piercing sound of friction. It grinned coldly. It leaped into the sky and immediately caught up with Ji Tianqing and Yin Yao. "You destroyed my habitat and still want to escape? Dream on." The white-bone giant demon opened its huge white-bone mouth and let out a muffled roar. Its entire body burst out with a murderous aura. As it spoke, it waved its pair of huge white bone palms and unleashed an overwhelming gray fog. It attacked Ji, Tianqing, and Yin Yao. The rolling gray fog was like a monstrous flood. It spread in the sky and covered a radius of hundreds of miles. The gray fog was the aura of death. It contained a terrifying corrosive power that could cause life to wither and everything to die. Ji, Tianqing, and Yin Yao were enveloped by the gray fog. They were instantly trapped in a gray cage. They could not tell north from south. The formless chi of death immediately attacked their bodies, causing their bodies to wither rapidly and their hair to turn white. In just a few breaths, more than half of their vitality was lost. They turned from young men in the prime of their lives to old and withered white-haired old men. Such a strange and powerful secret art shocked Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. They were extremely afraid. Fortunately, Yun Yao quickly took out the longevity divine pearl. She cast a spell and activated the power of the divine pearl. It released 2 dark green light beams. Swish, swish. The dark green light beam drilled into their bodies and immediately replenished their boundless vitality. In the blink of an eye, the two of them turned back from white-haired old man and old woman to young men in their 20s. Ji Tianxing activated the power of the heaven-mending orb again. He waved his hand and unleashed a giant white sword of light that was 1,000 feet long. It broke a huge crack in the gray fog cage. The gray fog of death was quickly dispersed when it encountered the sacred white light. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao escaped the gray fog cage and continued to fly out of the Flower Valley. Seeing this scene, the white-bone giant demon was stunned. The blood-red fire in its 4 white-bone eye sockets danced wildly. It obviously did not expect that Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could remain in their original state and not be killed by the aura of death. Chapter 1709. The white-bone troll was only stunned for a moment before it streaked across the sky and chased after Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. Its strength was even more terrifying than the twin flower demons, and its speed was as fast as light. As it flew, a gray fog surged around its body, covering the sky and the sun. Any living thing within 25 miles of it, whether it was flowers, grass, trees, birds, or beasts, would instantly lose their vitality and wither into a pile of black ash. Such a strange and powerful lethality was truly, peerlessly terrifying and frightening. In just 10 seconds, the white-bone troll had caught up with Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. The white-bone troll was about to attack again. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and used his ultimate move to attack. Broken Moon Sword. He held the sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands and used all his strength to slash out 1,000-foot-long giant sword. The dark golden giant sword slashed towards the white-bone troll with unstoppable power that could kill everything. The power of this sword was enough to split mountains and rivers, and split the land within 50 miles. However, the white-bone troll turned a blind eye to it. It waved its hand and shot out a gray fog to meet the golden giant's sword. Bam! A deafening sound rang out as the surging gray fog collided with the giant's sword, exploding with a dull sound. The gray fog of death did not dissipate and actually blocked the giant sword's power. Soon, the golden giant's sword was corroded and dissipated. Ji Tianxing's attack was neutralized, but he was unwilling to give up and stab with his sword. Piercing sword. The sword of Burial of Heaven shot out a cold light that instantly traversed 20 miles in the sky and hit the white-bone troll. However, a thick gray fog gathered in front of the white-bone troll like a shield. The cold light exploded in the gray fog, and a cold light soared up and covered the sky. The gray fog was shattered by the explosion and scattered in the sky. The white-bone troll was not injured at all. It became even more ferocious as it swung its giant white-bone palm. Bam! Bam! Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao could not dodge in time and were hit by the giant white-bone palm. They were sent flying and crashed into the mountains dozens of miles away. Boom! The lush, dark green mountain range was immediately smashed apart by the violent impact, causing dirt and rocks to splatter everywhere. Hundreds of towering trees were also swept away by the shockwave. They fell to the ground uniformly and were crushed into dregs. When Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao crawled out of the ruins and flew back into the sky, they were already covered in dust, and their faces were covered in blood. Both of them were heavily injured. They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Tianxing, this giant demon, is a 10,000 skeleton demon. It's formed from the bones of tens of thousands of human martial artists over thousands of years. It's extremely terrifying. Its strength is comparable to a powerhouse at the 6th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. It's impossible for us to be its opponent. We can't be entangled with it anymore. We have to find a way to get rid of it. Yin Yao stared at the 10,000 skeleton demon with a solemn expression and secretly transmitted her voice to Ji Tianxing. Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and replied to her through voice transmission. Those tens of thousands of skeletons are the powerhouses who broke into the 100-Flower Valley in the past 1,000 years. The weakest of them is at the Essence Soul realm. There is no lack of Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses among them. This 10,000 skeleton demon not only gathered terrifying demonic power, but also mastered the deadly poison of the 100-Flower Valley. It's an evolved demon. I'm afraid it's not that easy to get rid of it. I have to use more means. As soon as he finished speaking, the 10,000 skeleton demon had already teleported over. It waved a pair of giant white bone fists and smashed them down from the sky. Once the giant white bone fists hit, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao would be smashed to pieces. There was no chance of survival. At the critical moment, Yin Yao summoned the Luotian spirit again and was about to inject her magic power into the statue. She had already used it twice before. Now, there was only one chance left. However, Ji Tianxing shouted through voice transmission, "Yao Yao, don't use the Luotian spirit so easily. Let me deal with it." As he said that, he glared at the 10,000 skeleton demon and shouted in a loud voice, "Thunder!" He suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Endless purple divine lightning surged out of the golden eye. It condensed into a pillar of divine lightning and blasted at the 10,000 skeleton demon. Kaboom! In the next moment, the 1,000-foot-long pillar of divine lightning struck the giant white bone fists with a loud bang. Immediately, the palace-sized giant white bone fists were shattered by the pillar of divine lightning. Dense white bones splattered everywhere. The 10,000 skeleton demon was also enveloped by the dazzling purple lightning. Its body tumbled and flew backward, falling 5 kilometers away. Crackling sounds of thunder rang out. The 10,000 skeleton demon trembled violently. Thousands of white bone fragments scattered all over its body. Soon after, there was another loud plop sound as it smashed into a mountain peak. The 10,000-foot-tall mountain peak was smashed into pieces and turned into a pile of ruins. The 10,000 skeleton demon rolled a few times on the ground and struggled for a moment. It roared a few times before shaking off the lightning arcs all over its body. When it climbed up from the ruins and flew back into the sky, its body was already incomplete. It was still emitting thick black smoke. It looked down at Ji Tianxing from above and shouted angrily, "Damn little reptile, you actually mastered the power of thunder." Although the 10,000 skeleton demon strength was unparalleled. But everything in this world was about mutual promotion and restraint. The sacred and violent thunder just happened to restrain the evil and filthy 10,000 skeleton demon. Although Ji Tianxing's strength was too low and could only cause some minor injuries and trouble. But this was still an obvious restraint. If Ji Tianxing also had the strength of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, even if he was only at the 3rd or 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, he would have absolute confidence in killing the 10,000 skeleton demon. The 10,000 skeleton demon twisted its body and waved its hands to release gray fog. It sucked the broken bones scattered in the ruins into its palms. Then it stuffed the messy broken bones into the wounds all over its body. After a series of cracking noises, its body was restored to its original state. Crack, crack, crack. Little reptile, so what if you control thunder? Your realm is too low. You're like an ant. How can you compete with me? Accept your death obediently. Your corpses will become a part of my body. The 10,000 skeleton demon grinned and laughed loudly. Its tone was extremely arrogant and savage. Wrapped in the gray fog that filled the sky, it rushed towards Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao again. This time, it waved its palms and used a secret technique. It controlled the gray fog that filled the sky and condensed hundreds of gray blades, sealing off the area within a 50-mile radius. Dead Soul Ghost Blade. Each Dead Soul Ghost Blade was 1,000 feet long and contained an extremely terrifying aura of death, as if it came from the netherworld. Hundreds of ghost blades stabbed at the same time, locking onto the auras of Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's primordial spirits, leaving them nowhere to hide. Once they were hit by the Dead Soul Ghost Blade, their primordial spirits would immediately be destroyed and they would die on the spot. At this critical moment, Yun Yao no longer hesitated. She hurriedly channeled her majestic magic power and injected it into the ice crystal statue. Chapter 17:10. In order to save her life, Yun Yao did not hesitate to use the Luotian spirit. This was the third time she had used it, and it would also be the last time. Bam, 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 bam. Hundreds of undead ghost blades hit the icy blue light shield, producing a series of dull sounds. The light shield trembled continuously from the attacks, and ripples appeared, but it did not shatter. Cracks began to appear on the ice crystal statue in Yun Yao's hand, and it began to make cracking sounds. Pieces of ice crystals peeled off from the statue and scattered on the ground. In a few seconds, the entire ice crystal statue would shatter, and the icy blue light shield would also dissipate. At the same time, Ji Tianxing took out a white talisman from his interspatial ring. This white talisman contained vast and mighty spatial power. It was a tribulation-grade transference talisman. The universal treasure box that Hong Qingtian gave Ji Tianxing contained more than 30 talismans with different effects. When Ji Tianxing encountered Ghost Child for the first time in the Arctic Abyss, he had used the transference talisman to escape. Now, he and Yun Yao were forced into a dead end again, and they could only use this talisman to escape. A vast amount of dermic power surged from his fingertips, and he injected it into the transference talisman. Swoosh! The transference talisman was immediately activated, and golden flames ignited. The entire talisman turned into a ball of dense white light, and it immediately condensed into a white door of light in midair. This was a spatial portal that could teleport people thousands of miles away in an instant. Yao, let's go. Ji Tianxing grabbed Yun Yao's wrist and entered the spatial portal as fast as the wind. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the two of them disappeared into the portal of light. In the next moment, the two of them could teleport to somewhere thousands of miles away through the portal and escape the pursuit of the 10,000 skeletal demon. However, things did not go as planned. The power of the 10,000 skeletal demon was beyond Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao's imagination. Just as the two of them stepped into the portal and were about to disappear, the icy blue light shield shattered into pieces. Hundreds of millions of ice shards fell from the sky. The 10,000 skeletal demon's figure flashed, and it rushed to the portal. It raised its arms as fast as lightning, and a dazzling blood-red light shot out as it fiercely slammed into the white door of light. Kaboom! The white door of light had not dissipated before it was shattered by the 10,000 skeletal demon's attack. The spatial power was instantly disrupted. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao had already entered the darkness and passed through the spatial tunnel, leaving this place. Unfortunately, after the spatial energy was disrupted, the spatial tunnel began to shake violently and quickly crumbled. No one could be sure what would happen next and where the two of them would be teleported to. It might be somewhere hundreds of miles away, thousands of miles away, or hundreds of miles under the ground. There is also the possibility that the two of them would be lost in the layers of alternate spaces, never to return to the Shenwu continent. The only thing he could be sure of was that the space tunnel had been destroyed. It was impossible for the two of them to teleport safely thousands of miles away. In the next moment, somewhere in the dark underground, a cluster of dazzling white light suddenly burst out from the layers of rocks. Bam! Following a loud, muffled sound, the white light blossomed and blasted a 3-foot-wide hole in the hard brown rock layer. The white light was dazzling, and gravel flew everywhere. Two battered and exhausted figures rushed out of the big hole and crashed into the rock layer. The unparalleled force of impact shattered the rock layers within a radius of 10,000 feet, turning them into a huge cave. The two figures crashed into the ruins and were buried by the falling gravel. After a full 10 seconds, the two figures let out painful groans and struggled to climb out of the rubble. The first to climb out of the rubble was a young man in ragged clothes with disheveled hair. He was Ji Tianxing, without a doubt. He was covered in blood, and he staggered toward another pile of rubble with a black and ancient broken sword in his hand. Yao 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 Yao, how are you? His bloodshot eyes searched the rubble, and he called out anxiously and worriedly. In the rubble 100 steps away, Yun Yao coughed violently a few times before climbing out of the rubble. Her white dress was fluttering in the wind, and she looked like a holy fairy. But now she was covered in wounds, and her long hair was messy. She looked very miserable, the blood mixed with the soil, staining her white dress and covering her face. She bent over and gasped for breath, and blood kept flowing out her nose and mouth. Ji Tianxing limped over and hurriedly supported her to check her injuries. The result was indisputable. Yin Yao was seriously injured like him. When a spatial tunnel collapsed, the explosion and the power of space folding almost crushed their bodies. Fortunately, they were talented and had special constitutions, which saved their lives. But their essence souls were seriously injured, and their bodies were covered in wounds. Their internal organs were also shattered and displaced, and blood kept flowing out. Ji Tianxing hurriedly took out a few healing pills and gave half of them to Yun Yao. After the pills entered her stomach, they quickly released a strong medicinal effect under the catalysis of magic power. Their injuries were under control, and their aura and strength gradually stabilized. Yin Yao raised her hand to wipe the blood and soil off her face. She looked around and asked weakly, Tianxing, where are we? Ji Tianxing looked around and saw that it was pitch black. He released his divine sense to explore the surroundings. After a while, he checked the situation clearly. His face immediately changed, and he frowned. We are 50 miles underground. Above us is a piece of scorched earth and ruins. It seems to be the place where we fought with the twin flower demons. Yin Yao also frowned and said in a complicated tone, What? We are back in the Flower Valley, and we are deep underground? Ji Tianxing nodded and said angrily, Originally, my great shift talisman could help us teleport thousands of miles and easily get rid of the 10,000 skeletal demons. I didn't expect the 10,000 skeletal demons to destroy the teleportation door and the spatial tunnel. Under a freak combination of factors, we couldn't control the direction of our teleportation, and we actually appeared here. We really underestimated the 10,000 skeletal demons. Yun Yao comforted him and said, The spatial tunnel was destroyed. Most of the martial artists would have been killed by the explosion, or they would be lost in the folded space and disappear forever. We are already very lucky to be able to survive. Moreover, the 10,000 skeletal demons wouldn't expect us to return to the underground of the Flower Valley. This place is thousands of miles away from it. We have enough time to leave before it comes back. Ji Tianxing nodded. He pointed at a cave entrance 300 meters away and said, There's a cave over there. I've checked it just now. There's a passage outside the cave. Let's go out from there. Chapter 17:11. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao passed through the cave and entered a spacious tunnel. This tunnel, which was located deep underground, was actually more than 10 zhang high and 3 zhang wide. The ground and the walls on both sides of the tunnel were paved with huge black rocks. They were flat and neat. It was obvious that this passage had been artificially created. The surface of the huge black rocks was covered with the marks of time. It was obvious that it had experienced a long time. Yin Yao frowned in confusion and asked, Strange, the 100-Flower Valley has always been occupied by the twin flower demon and the 10,000 bone demon. Why would there be an ancient tunnel deep underground? Ji Tianxing looked at the end of the tunnel with a serious expression and said, Yao Yao, the 10,000 bone demon, came out from the bottom of the Flower Valley. This tunnel is probably related to it. Also, I can sense that the end of this tunnel is probably a demon's den. There's an extremely strong demon aura coming from it. Yin Yao nodded slightly and said, I can sense it too. There's still the aura of the 10,000 bone demon here. It's very likely that it's hiding in its den. Are we still going in? Ji Tianxing thought for a while, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said in a low voice, Damn that 10,000 bone demon. It made us so miserable and almost lost our lives. How can we let it go so easily? It's even more impossible for us to escape like this. All right, then we'll have to be even more careful. Yin Yao nodded in agreement with his decision and exhorted. Soon, 15 minutes passed. The two of them walked along the pitch-black stone tunnel for more than 10 miles underground. They took several turns along the way. Finally, the two of them were about to reach the end of the tunnel. There was a straight and wide stone tunnel under their feet. 1,000 zhang in front of them was a pitch-black hall. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao walked side by side. They both held their swords and were on high alert. Yin Yao suddenly frowned, and her gaze fell on the wall on the right side of the tunnel. She saw a grayish-white skull embedded in the pitch-black stone wall that was 30 zhang above the ground. Judging from its appearance, the skull belonged to a human martial artist. Moreover, it was a middle-aged man. Ji Tianxing observed it carefully for a while and discovered that the bones of the skull had been strengthened, making it comparable to an immortal divinity-level magical treasure. He could basically conclude that the owner of the skull was a human warrior at the primordial soul realm when he was alive. At this moment, Yin Yao pointed at the left wall of the tunnel. On the left side of the wall, there was also a skull 3 feet above the ground. The skull belonged to a human warrior at the primordial soul realm. The two skulls were facing each other, and both of them were looking down at the ground. It was quite strange. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao continued to move forward. They discovered that a pair of skulls were embedded in the rock walls on both sides of the passage every 100 feet. Such meticulously arranged skulls made the pitch-black tunnel even more eerie, filled with a strange and terrifying atmosphere. Why inlay skulls on the walls? Could it be some kind of formation or ritual? Maybe the 10,000 skeletal demon deliberately arranged it to show its identity or dignity. The two of them walked along the tunnel for 10,000 feet and discussed secretly with each other. There were exactly 200 skulls embedded in the tunnel that was 10,000 feet long. Fortunately, when the two of them reached the end of the tunnel and stepped into the main hall, the skulls did not move and there were no anomalies. The main hall was very spacious, with a radius of 1,000 feet, but it was not pitch black. The floor that was paved with black boulders was carved with dense, winding patterns of the Ghost Clan, which seemed to form a great formation. The formation was operating, and the secret runes were also shining with dark red or dazzling purple brilliance. They were constantly flickering, and their brightness was fluctuating. With the brilliance of the patterns of the formation, Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao could see that the walls around the main hall were engraved with countless pictures of deities and ghosts. Most of the pictures were of ferocious demons and evil gods. In addition, in the 4 corners of the east, south, west, and north, there were 4 skulls embedded in the walls that were 100 feet above the ground. Those 4 skulls were also the skulls of human martial artists. Although they had been there for thousands of years, they had not turned grayish-white and were still sparkling like jade. Upon closer inspection, Ji Tianxing discovered that every skull had been tempered by lightning, and there were even tiny lightning patterns left on them. These 4 skulls belong to human martial artists in the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and they have experienced at least 5 lightning tribulations. This result made Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao frown. They increasingly felt that this main hall was strange, and there must be some secrets hidden. Fortunately, the 4 skulls were embedded in the walls without moving, and there were no abnormalities. Ji Tianxing and Yin Yao ignored them for the time being and continued to observe the situation in the main hall. In the north of the main hall, there was a 90 feet tall black altar on the ground close to the wall. It was unknown what material the altar was made of, but it was inlaid with many demon crystals and blood essence stones, emitting a strange rainbow light. This altar was also very old, and it had been there for at least 1,000 years. At the top of the altar was a blood pool that had a radius of 30 feet. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao checked the area and saw that the sunken blood pool was filled with purplish-black blood. The blood was bubbling and surging. A very pungent smell of blood came from the blood pool and filled the entire main hall. In addition to the bubbling blood, there was also a large ball of 5-colored light floating above the blood pool. Ji Tianxing took a closer look and saw clearly that there were over 100 remnant souls in the water tank-sized ball of light. Some of the remnant souls were ice blue, some were dark red, and some were grayish-white. Every remnant soul represented a martial artist at the essence soul realm and above. However, the hundreds of remnant souls were not only of human martial artists, but also of demon beasts and martial artists of other races. Under the catalysis of the altar's power, the 5-colored ball of light slowly rotated. Every 15 minutes, a dark red stream of air would fly out of the ball of light and rise into the air. Ji Tianxing's gaze followed the stream of air and looked up. He saw a huge blood-red skeleton embedded in the north wall. It was a skeleton troll that was 1,000 feet tall. Its bones were dark red and flowed with red light, as if blood was flowing. The skeleton troll was embedded in the wall and sat on a huge white bone throne. The white bones that were as translucent as jade formed a 20-foot-tall throne. Green, blue, and red gems and crystals were embedded in the throne. This scene was very strange, and there was a sense of horror and majesty. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao were stunned for a moment. They looked at the blood skeleton and sized it up carefully. They saw that the blood skeleton's body was also formed by countless broken bones. Its skeleton and body were almost the same as a human woman's, except that it was more than 100 times larger. In the dark red skull, there was a pair of deeply sunken eye sockets. There was nothing inside. Its hands were placed on the armrests of the white bone throne, but its wrists were tied to the throne by thick bronze chains. Chapter 17:12. The gigantic blood skull sat upright on the white bone throne. A few thick bronze chains firmly tied its limbs and waist, binding it to the throne. Such a strange scene caused Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao to look at each other, and they revealed dense puzzlement. There's a skeletal ogre here, too, and it's completely blood red? Is it the companion of the 10,000-bone devil, just like the twin flower demon? No, it can't be that simple. If this skeletal ogre is the companion of the 10,000-bone devil, why is it imprisoned on the throne? The two of them looked at each other and secretly communicated with each other through voice transmission. However, at this moment, a dark red stream of air flew out of the 5-colored ball of light above the altar and entered the blood skull's head. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao immediately sensed that the dark red stream of air was strengthening the blood skull and making its aura even stronger. The blood skull seemed to have sensed their presence. Scarlet flames suddenly lit up in its pitch-black, empty eye sockets. The fiercely dancing flames were its eyes. It stared at Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao. Its aura was originally still, as if it was in a deep sleep. Now that it had woken up, it was exuding a powerful, evil aura and releasing an unparalleled, invisible pressure. Not good. It's awake. Ji Tianxing immediately sensed that something was wrong. He pulled Yun Yao away from the evil altar and quickly retreated. At the same time, rows of gemstone lamps suddenly lit up on the walls of the hall. The scarlet light immediately illuminated the entire hall. 200 scarlet rays of light also lit up the giant stone passageway outside the main hall. However, they weren't gemstone lamps. Instead, they were the eyes of skulls that were flashing with scarlet light. Crisp cracking sounds came from inside the stone passageway. They were as dense as raindrops and very rapid. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao looked at the stone passageway outside the hall and saw that the skulls embedded in the walls had all come to life. Every skull was wriggling and crawling out of the walls. Behind the skulls were many thin and short skeletons. Although the skeleton maintained the shape of a human, it was only half the height of a human. With a head the size of a normal person, it looked very out of place. When the skeletons crawled out of the wall, there was only a black hole left in the wall. Ji Tianxing and Yun Yao finally understood that the skulls were not embedded in the wall. It was just that their bodies were hidden in the wall and their heads were exposed. They had been in a deep sleep all this time. Now, the white skeletons were all awakened. They gathered in the giant stone passageway and majestically charged towards the main hall. The 200 skeletons gathered together like a grayish-white torrent, flickering with specks of red light. They were full of killing intent and bravery. They quickly rushed into the hall and pounced towards Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao. Even the 4 skulls of the tribulation stage experts in the corners of the hall drilled out of the walls. The bodies of these 4 skulls were all silver-white skeletons. Their bodies surged with dark red bloodlight, and their auras and strength were even more powerful. Crack, crack, crack. With a crisp sound, the 4 silver skeletons also landed in the hall. They stood around Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao, eyeing them covetously and slowly approaching them. 200 smaller skeletons also rushed to the center of the main hall, surrounding Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. The 2 of them were surrounded and were about to be torn to pieces by more than 200 skeletons. At this moment of extreme danger, the 300-meter-tall blood skeleton suddenly opened its mouth and let out an angry and majestic roar. Roar! The dry and hoarse roar was like the roar of a ferocious beast, but it contained a powerful and majestic aura. When the skeletons in the hall heard the blood skeleton's roar, they were so scared that their bodies trembled and they retreated one after another. In particular, the 200 little skeletons retreated from the hall like a tide, and all of them slipped into the passageway outside the hall. The remaining 4 tribulation stage skeletons also retreated to the corner of the hall with fear, not daring to act rashly. Ji, Tianxing, and Yun Yao had already raised the swords in their hands to their chests. They were ready to fight back at any time. Seeing this scene, both of them breathed a sigh of relief and slowly put down the swords in their hands. Yao Yao, we can't stay here for long. Let's leave quickly. Ji Tianxing pulled Yun Yao and turned to walk out of the hall. He had guessed that this place might be the lair of the skeletal demon. Even if he couldn't kill the skeletal demon, he could still vent his anger by destroying its lair. But he didn't expect that this place was not only the lair of the skeletal demon, but also more than 200 skeletons and a mysterious and powerful blood skeleton. At this point, he could only give up his previous plan and leave this place as soon as possible. However, Yin Yao stood still and said to him through voice transmission, "Tianxing, wait a minute. I think that blood skeleton is a little strange. Look at its eyes and its aura. It doesn't seem like it wants to kill us." Ji Tianxing turned his head and looked at the blood skeleton's eyes. He stared at the 2 balls of blood flames that were dancing in them. He saw that the 2 balls of blood flames were dancing rhythmically, as if they contained some kind of meaning and were conveying some kind of thought. The blood skeleton's big mouth also opened and closed gently, as if it was talking, but it couldn't make a normal sound. Ji Tianxing observed it for a moment and carefully sensed the changes in its aura. He immediately frowned. Strange. It doesn't seem to be hostile to us. It's trying very hard to communicate with us. It seems like it has something to say to us. Yin Yao quickly nodded in agreement. Yes, I felt it too. Just now, when those skeletons wanted to besiege us, it was also it who shouted to retreat and resolved our crisis. Ji Tianxing grew more and more confused. He couldn't understand it. But this shouldn't be. Those skeletons were all afraid of it, so they obviously had to obey its orders. If that's the case, it must be the leader of the skeletons, just like the 10,000-bone demon. Why would it let us go? Yin Yao shook her head gently and said through voice transmission, I don't know what's going on either, but my intuition tells me that this blood skeleton is different from the 10,000-bone demon. I'm afraid there's a story behind it. While the 2 of them were discussing through voice transmission, the blood skeleton slowly turned its left hand, and a dark red, blood-colored light appeared in its palm. Originally, its palm was facing down, and its arm was lying flat on the white bone throne. But now it turned its arm, palm facing up, and slowly reached out towards Ji Tianxing. A ball of blood-red light floated in the middle of its palm, within which was a dark red crystal. Unfortunately, its wrist was bound by bronze chains, so it could only reach out a little bit and couldn't move anymore. It moved its mouth slightly, as if it was trying to say something to Ji Tianxing. However, it couldn't make any sound, nor could it use its divine will to communicate. Ji Tianxing could only guess its intentions from its expression and movements.